Su Jinyuan observed Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin in silence. After all, these two legendary supernatural beings were his top priority. As a low-level bandit who had just joined them, he thought it would be difficult to meet these two supernatural beings and interact with them. However, he was wrong. Over the past few days, Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin had been working together with everyone. No matter how dirty or tired they were, they never complained once. Su Jinyuan was a little puzzled by this. How could they possibly be supernatural beings? So these were the specialists from Stronghold 178? How could they be this humble? However, his pained face served as a reminder that he could not afford to offend the two. Su Jinyuan asked Jin Lan quietly, "Brother Jin Lan, the two of them are just putting on an act, yet y'all still believe them? The big shots are just playing a child's game here, so how can you trust them?" Jin Lan gave him a look of disdain and said, "Our two lords are not putting on an act. We're not idiots. If they were just pretending, couldn't we tell? As for you, you only know how to laze around and not work. You're not allowed to eat the corn that's given by our fellow villagers today." Su Jinyuan was speechless. What the fuck was that? Su Jinyuan said unhappily, "You're a fucking bandit. What are you being so proud of when all you're doing is farming?" Jin Lan shot him a look and sneered, "It's not disgraceful if we work hard to fill our stomachs. But it's a disgrace if all you know is how to be a lazy bum." Su Jinyuan thought it over seriously. That does make sense. Wait. Who the fuck are you calling a lazy bum? However, Su Jinyuan had been observing Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin for a long time. He had been spending all his energy on observing them. In the end, he realized the two of them were not pretending. They could really take the suffering. In fact, Su Jinyuan was starting to believe the identities of Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin. It would be great if he could really be recruited by Stronghold 178 too, but somehow he felt it was a little unreal. Besides, his other brothers to the north were still waiting for his news. What should he choose? The people who came here with a purpose would always be more difficult to convince than the others. That was because they already had an objective from the start. At this moment, someone shouted, "I need a few people over here." Boss said that those who help build the houses will receive 15 bullets each. Su Jinyuan saw the people around him running over in an instant. Jin Lan was roaring, "Don't anyone dare fight me!" Su Jinyuan followed right behind and muttered, "Has everyone gone fucking crazy?" When they reached the refugee settlement, the black bricks were piled up off to one side. However, someone said, "But where are we gonna get mortar from?" At first, everyone thought that building a brick house only required some beams, a roof, and bricks. However, they now remembered they had forgotten to make the cement mortar. It was available in the stronghold, but they couldn't possibly go there and buy it, right? Nearby, Ren Xiaosu said dumbfoundedly, "Do any of you have any experience in building a house?" The refugees and bandits shook their heads. "We've never built a brick house before. We have been living in mud huts all our lives." Ren Xiaosu asked loudly, "Does anyone know? There'll be a reward of 20 bullets if anyone does, so if you have the know-how, please don't keep quiet." Everyone looked at one another. Although they really wanted to earn those 20 bullets, they really did not know how to build houses. Suddenly, Su Jinyuan said, "A very gooey mixture one of sticky rice mortar, lime, and hemp fibers can be used as an adhesive to fill the gaps between the bricks. It won't crack even after a decade or two." Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. "What about the proportions? What's the ratio for each of the ingredients? Did you used to work in construction?" "I used to build houses for the richer families in town. Y'all can source the materials first. I'll adjust the proportions later. It's not difficult to find them out here in the wastelands," Su Jinyuan said aloofly. He was not doing this for the 20 bullets, but because he felt that these refugees were so stupid that they did not even know a simple thing like that. Suddenly, Jin Lan walked over and thumped him on the chest. Su Jinyuan was about to fly into a rage when Jin Lan smiled and said, "Great one, bro. Awesome." Ren Xiaosu led the applause. "Come on, let's thank our brother here. What's your name?" "Su Jinyuan." "All right, you'll be the leader of the construction team of our settlement from now on." Ren Xiaosu casually appointed him. Su Jinyuan's mind was in a daze as he looked at the people around him who were giving him looks of approval. He suddenly recalled what Jin Lan had said to him, "It's not disgraceful if we work hard to fill our stomachs." Ren Xiaosu went to get 20 bullets and handed them to Su Jinyuan. "Well done, bro." Su Jinyuan looked at the bullets. They felt rather heavy in his hand. When he saw the others looking at him in envy, he suddenly felt a tinge of the happiness Jin Lan and the others felt when they earned their bullets. While they were building the houses, some of the refugees brought over sweet potatoes, corn, and other food to them. As their living conditions here were bad, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and corn were their staple foods. A female refugee was praising Su Jinyuan as she stuffed food into his arms. "I've watched you since the first day you arrived. At first glance, I could tell that you're a learned person." Here, those who could build houses were considered learned. Just as Su Jinyuan was about to deny that he was a learned person, he was stopped by Ren Xiaosu, who said with a smile, "You're a learned person if you can use your knowledge to help everyone. Knowledge should be used to change the world, and you're changing the world right now." These bold claims lavished sky-high praise onto Su Jinyuan. When he didn't do any work previously, all of the other bandits disliked and despised him. But after he displayed his abilities, these fucking bandits started to address him warmly as Brother Su every day when they saw him. Su Jinyuan was unused to the huge difference in treatment. Meanwhile, this gang of bandits was turning from a scattered bunch into a unified force. They would come to share the same values and gain a mysterious thing called faith in the time they would be spending together. But of course, it was still quite far from that day. Half a month quickly passed. Su Jinyuan was thinking as he chewed on the delicious corn cob in his hands. What was he here for? He had come here to gain the trust of this gang of bandits, to get a better understanding of their current situation, then get back their weapons, and plan with the other bandits in the north to destroy this entire settlement. But what did he end up doing? He had been building houses every day. Not only that, he had also dug for silt, helped the refugees sow seeds, and eaten their corn. A female refugee had taken a liking to him and kept dragging him into her mud hut, but Su Jinyuan used a great deal of effort to control himself. As a notorious bandit from the north, how could he stay here just because of romance and corn? At this moment, Ren Xiaosu shouted in the distance, "Come and help carry bricks. You can earn a bullet for every 30 bricks carried." Su Jinyuan counted his bullets and quickly finished eating the corn in his hands in 3 bites. "I'm coming. Brothers, don't fight me to carry those bricks. I've almost collected enough bullets." That refugee had even asked Ren Xiaosu to be merciful, and this made the bandit who got beaten up extremely ashamed. After that, such things never happened again. On the other hand, some refugees were still bullying their fellow refugees. They would go to their houses and act like punks while mooching off on their food. In the end, when Jin Lan and the others could no longer bear to watch, they beat up those punks and dragged them off to the other bandits to reform them. These punks might be capable of bullying the refugees, but going against the bandits was something none of them even dared to think of. The brick houses were rapidly taking shape. The bandits were all full of strength and could work extremely fast as well. Ren Xiaosu looked at Su Jinyuan, who was supervising the construction of a house. Off to the side, a female refugee was looking at him lovingly. Ren Xiaosu turned around and asked Yang Xiaojin, "He's one of those that you said was problematic, right?" Yang Xiaojin nodded. "But it seems like he no longer has any ulterior motives." Yang Xiaojin had been wondering if this group of people would cause them any trouble and had been spying on them. At the time, she was wondering why Ren Xiaosu was not worried. In the end, she realized her worries had been unnecessary. She could see that Su Jinyuan was now looking forward to trading for bullets every day. This time, they managed to build 12 houses in one go. In this desolate wasteland, brick houses were once again rising up from the ground. When Ren Xiaosu saw all of this, he felt a swirl of emotions. The sturdy brick houses were a symbol of the continuation of human civilization. The houses were about 28 square meters each. One single structure required around 1,900 bricks to build, and more than 10 people could live in it. Although there were still too few houses compared to the number of people they had, the second batch of bricks were already being fired. When they took them out in another 2 days, they could continue building the houses. Jin Lan and Zhang Yihan were bragging to the refugees yesterday, saying they were going to build houses for everyone to live in. At that time, Ren Xiaosu asked him while laughing, "By the time YLVE collected enough bullets, do you still want to continue building houses?" Embarrassed, Jin Lan said, "We can't just watch our fellow villagers continue living in those mud huts, can we? And there's so many children as well. It gets very damp in the shelters, and that isn't good for their health." Zhang Yihan added, "We can even build a school, a factory." Ren Xiaosu chuckled. "Why the hell would we build a factory? We don't even have the tech to run one. What if we gain the tech in the future?" Zhang Yihan mumbled. Then Ren Xiaosu walked over to those brick houses that were just built. He told Jin Lan, "Count how many bullets everyone has." It had been more than 20 days since the bandits started working, so a lot of them should have accumulated enough bullets by now. After counting for a long time, Jin Lan scratched his head and said, "Because some new brothers have just joined us, we shared our bullets evenly between them. So everyone still has 2 to 3 more bullets to go. We should have enough by tomorrow after one more day of making bricks." It was the arrival of the new bandits that had delayed everyone's progress. Otherwise, they would have accumulated enough bullets through their additional work in carrying bricks, mixing clay, and sowing seeds. Fortunately for them, no new bandits had joined recently, with their total number here controlled at around 400 people. Of course, there were also some bandits who'd escaped, but there were only a few of them. Ren Xiaosu had mentioned to Yang Xiaojin that some of the bandit gangs to the north must have already started heading south. It couldn't have been more than 10 days since new bandits came by to their settlement. Therefore, they were very likely going to fight the gangs from the north to see who would be the victor. It was at this moment that Yang Xiaojin recalled that they were actually here to exterminate the bandits. But now was not the time to think about that. Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "You haven't included the bullets that are gonna be given out for building the houses today. I said before that everyone who helps build houses will get 15 bullets each. We keep our promises." When he said that, Jin Lan and the others grew excited. After working so hard for more than 20 days, their efforts were finally paying off. If Ren Xiaosu had returned to them their guns at the start, they would definitely not be this excited, because those guns were theirs to begin with, and they were even given by other forces for free. But it was different now. Saving 100 bullets and trading them for a gun was like an honor they earned. The reason they were so excited was not because of the gun, but because it meant they had earned the right to bear arms in this settlement. This right felt worth a lot of money. In the past, they had never been so happy or proud even after robbing the passing merchants. That was because they had earned this right today through their sweat. Ren Xiaosu had Jin Lan's people bring over all the firearms. "What do y'all plan to do when you receive your guns?" Jin Lan said excitedly, "We'll go robbing, of course. There's hundreds of us now, and we're so united. We can absolutely dominate the entire south." Jin Lan was not bragging either. After all, some of the bandit gangs to the north were still very fearsome. Ren Xiaosu was silent for a moment. He pointed to the refugees who were watching them from the sidelines and said, "Robbery? Are y'all gonna rob people like them?" When the crowd of refugees heard this, they were stunned. Jin Lan hurriedly explained, "We aren't gonna rob y'all. Why would we rob you? But there's still a lot of people just like them. Ren Xiaosu said, they also have children and wives. Su Jinyuan wondered, then why would we carry guns? To protect them, Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. He pointed at the female refugee who had been hooking up with Su Jinyuan every day and said, to protect Xiaqi, to protect the villagers, and to protect your families. Su Jinyuan stopped talking. Bashful, Xiaqi was making eyes at him. Ren Xiaosu picked up a gun and handed it to Su Jinyuan with both hands. After you take this gun, we'll become comrades, brothers, and family. Su Jinyuan took the gun hesitantly. Next up were the visibly excited Jin Lan and Zhang Yihan. Holding the cold and unfeeling guns in their arms, it felt like they were hugging a treasure. Jin Lan said to the villagers, don't worry. With me around, no bandits will be able to snatch y'all away. Yang Xiaojin watched all of this quietly from the side. Looking at the youth who was like the main character on a stage, she thought about how she had once mentioned it would be very difficult to make this gang of bandits find faith, and how it would be good enough to just unite them. But to her surprise, after a little more than 20 days had passed, a herd mentality had silently formed. On top of that, a belief to protect had also silently been born. There were no grand speeches of loyalty, and all Ren Xiaosu transmitted to the bandits was the belief to protect. Protect their own assets, protect their families, and protect their friends. Everything should be done from the perspective of guarding their own interests. There was no need to uphold world peace. That had nothing to do with them. But of course, be it the strength, will, or faith of this group, they were just tiny seeds that had been planted in them. If they were to be separated from a strong individual such as Ren Xiaosu and let go of the rope that was holding them together, they would probably break down quickly and go back to leading their own lives. Or if they encountered a strong opponent now, it would also be enough to deal them a quick defeat. But Yang Xiaojin felt that it was very impressive that Ren Xiaosu could plant these seeds. However, she reckoned she would have to wait a while longer for her house to be built. After all, not everyone in the settlement had a brick house. Since Ren Xiaosu wanted to set an example for the others, she didn't mind suffering with him. However, she was curious as to what target Ren Xiaosu would set for them next to hold them together now that the guns had been issued. Then she heard Ren Xiaosu say, starting tomorrow, we'll keep making bricks. For the next batch of bricks from the kill, we'll build our defenses with them. Jin Lan muttered, and I thought we wouldn't have to work anymore. Although Ren Xiaosu was working hard to change their thinking, old habits die hard. To Jin Lan and the others, they felt they should be going on a killing and pillaging spree if they had guns. Even if they were no longer keen on killing and pillaging, they shouldn't need to keep working. Ren Xiaosu spoke up, from tomorrow onwards, every 200 bullets earned will allow you to trade for a motorcycle. Jin Lan, Zhang Yihan, and the others looked at the brand new motorcycles with a sparkle in their eyes. They had not touched the motorcycles since they arrived at this settlement. All men loved things that exuded strength, and vehicles were one of those things. Be it a two-wheeled motorcycle or a four-wheeled car, the purring of the engines were just like a roar from their hearts. It was an enjoyable and pleasurable feeling. Su Jinyuan was a little hesitant. Should he also quickly get more work done so he could trade his bullets for a motorcycle? He was a skilled worker too, so he could definitely trade for one much faster than the others. The next morning, Ren Xiaosu walked along the river after waking up. The spring floods would last for quite a while, and the hotter the weather, the wider the river would get. By summer, the river that seemed to flow for forever would become a lifeline for humanity's survival as it stretched across the wastelands. Ren Xiaosu continued walking straight towards the settlement. Today was the day the bricks would be taken out of the kill. The bandits felt that the progress of using only one brick kiln to fire the bricks was a little slow, so they decided to construct a new and even bigger one. Someone asked Jin Lan why they needed to make so many bricks. The houses would be finished sooner or later, and afterwards, would the brick kilns be of any use? Jin Lan said mysteriously, what if a stronghold 179 suddenly gets built here? The question of why Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun had come here had been on the bandits' minds for a while now. After analyzing it for some time, everyone wondered if Stronghold 178 was planning to extend its influence inland. Wasn't this vast and empty valley a very good choice to start? No consortiums had built a stronghold here because this unincorporated zone was just too sensitive an area. No one would agree to the construction of a stronghold here by any of the other factions. But if a powerful organization like Stronghold 178 were to take action, the Yang Consortium, which was currently engaged in war, might not be able to stop them. Meanwhile, the Northern Wastes Zone Consortium was no match for Stronghold 178. Although the location was not exactly ideal, the opportunity was. Furthermore, if Stronghold 178 wanted to export their mine reserves inland, the valley was an unavoidable region that they needed to pass through. When they thought of this, Jin Lan and the others felt like they understood what was going on. Throughout this, everyone would greet each other warmly as brothers whenever they saw one another. It was as though they had really become family after Ren Xiaosu's speech. Some people really believed it, while others were still skeptical. But in light of the overall situation, those who did not believe it could not say much either. At the moment, the bandits who came here with Su Jinyuan were just watching in silence. They did not believe anything that was said. Someone counted the days and estimated there wasn't much time left until the window their leader had set for them. At the agreed time, they were to secretly head out into the wilderness tonight and report back to their leader about the attack plan. Afterwards, they would launch a surprise attack on the settlement the following night. "Brother Su, let's prepare to leave," someone said to Su Jinyuan. "Tonight." Su Jinyuan gave him a look and said, "What are you talking about? How can I leave my family?" The bandits under him were confused. "What fucking family? Are you fucking crazy?" At first, everyone thought Su Jinyuan was just kidding. But when they got serious again, they realized Su Jinyuan was absolutely not kidding. "Hurt," one of the bandits said, "Brother Su, didn't you say that you didn't buy their antics out here?" Su Jinyuan sighed and said, "Will we come to a good end by being bandits? Have you heard of any bandits who get to enjoy their later years?" Everyone carefully considered this and realized it was true. Su Jinyuan continued, "Why all VE interacted with Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun as well. Let's ignore whether they might really be from Stronghold 178. What do you think of them when compared to our previous leader? On strength, there's supernatural beings on both sides," the bandit analyzed. "But there's two of them here. On conduct, it's way more comfortable here." Someone said, "At our previous place, the atmosphere could get quite oppressive. Usually, we don't even dare to sigh too loudly." Su Jinyuan nodded. "What about here? It's just like being around family here. We can joke, we can work together, so let's not talk about anything else for now. Which side do y'all like better?" Su Jinyuan said, "Do you really think that I've been taken in by them? No, it's just that Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun have let me see a glimmer of hope." Su Jinyuan looked at Jin Lan and Zhang Yihan, who were moving bricks in the distance. Did these bandits choose to stay here because they were brainwashed? No, it was because they saw something called hope, so they willingly believed in the razzle-dazzle. If this razzle-dazzle could bring everyone a good life in the future, then would it still be considered a lie? Su Jinyuan had lost much sleep over this before finally arriving at his decision. "Then are we not gonna make a plan with the others to attack this settlement?" someone probed. Su Jinyuan nodded. "I'll find an opportunity to tell boss about this later and warn him to be on guard against any sneak attacks." Someone asked, "But if he learns that we came here as spies, will he start shunning us?" Su Jinyuan was taken aback. He took a deep breath and said, "I believe that he won't." Then Su Jinyuan walked to where Ren Xiaosu was. He thought he could convince all his brothers to stay behind, but someone still ran away in secret. Before leaving, that bandit even said, although I also think this place is great, just look at how everyone else doesn't even know how to use a gun. When the leader gets here, this place will be blown to dust overnight. I don't wanna die. The others looked at one another, unable to come to a decision themselves. When Su Jinyuan walked up to Ren Xiaosu and was hesitating to speak, Ren Xiaosu turned his head to him and asked with a smile, when are those bandits attacking us? Although he had said to his brothers I believe that he won't, he wasn't actually sure. But he realized at this moment that Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun had already known about the secret he was hiding. Yang Xiaojun stood next to Ren Xiaosu and looked at Su Jinyuan while saying, you guys deliberately scratched away the logos on your motorcycles, didn't you? That wasn't exactly clever, was it? But that's not enough to suggest anything, said Su Jinyuan, pursing his lips. Ever since y'all arrived, there haven't been any bandits coming here from the north. Ren Xiaosu chuckled and said, someone in the north must have already unified all the bandits at Mt. Daban, Mt. Tangwang, and Mt. Guan, right? Su Jinyuan said stubbornly, just because of that. Ren Xiaosu chuckled and said, we were bluffing. Su Jinyuan was dumbfounded. They were bluffing? Actually, we've been watching you for some time. Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, but it's only now that we've fully confirmed your identity. Then how are you gonna punish me? Su Jinyuan said in a low voice. The punishments dished out to bandit traitors had always been very cruel. They wouldn't show any mercy. Su Jinyuan knew that if it were any other bandit leader, this would probably mean the end for him. But deep down, he felt that Ren Xiaosu was different. Ren Xiaosu suddenly put out a hand to him and said, welcome to the team. Su Jinyuan heaved a sigh of relief. The young man in front of him was indeed different from the other bandit leaders. He said briefly, we originally agreed to meet tonight to come up with an attack plan for tomorrow night. But one of the 11 guys I brought here ran away, so my previous gang will definitely know that I've leaked their plans. So there's a possibility that they might attack in advance. Ren Xiaosu said, how many bandits does the gang to the north have? How many of them will be joining the attack? They originally had 1,200 people, but it should have increased recently. Su Jinyuan said, but not all of them will come here because they still have to fight with 2 other gangs in the north. If they all come here together, the other bandit gangs will definitely take advantage of the situation. According to the plan that we had, 600 bandits will be showing up here. In response, even Ren Xiaosu, who was already mentally prepared, gasped. The bandits in the valley had even fucking joined forces. How did they end up with so many people? Although not all of them would turn up for the attack, 600 bandits could still theoretically crush their refugee settlement. Of course, that was only in theory. Curious, Ren Xiaosu asked, which organization is the leader of the northern bandits from? Su Jinyuan was taken aback for a moment. I think he used to be from the Qing Consortium, but he has nothing to do with them now. Someone said that he escaped from Stronghold 113 and knows Su Xianchu of Stronghold 178 as well. However, I've never seen him contact Su Xianchu before, so maybe he only met him a couple times? Don't you know Master Su too? Maybe you know him as well. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Their leader escaped from Stronghold 113 and even knew Su Xianchu? Could this be someone he knew? What's his name? Wang Kongyang. Damn, Ren Xiaosu was surprised. He was not the only one who knew this man. Yang Xiaojun knew him as well. Yang Xiaojun thought back and said, was he that man who was supposed to go with us on the expedition to the Jing Mountains? That's him. Ren Xiaosu sighed. Enemies were always bound to meet. If Su Jinyuan hadn't mentioned the name, Ren Xiaosu would have forgotten about this person. Wang Kongyang was a junior officer in the private army of Stronghold 113, and he was similarly ostracized by the organization like Su Xianchu was. Wang Kongyang had, in fact, worked together with Su Xianchu, but they weren't friends. Wang Kongyang never stopped pursuing Ren Xiaosu after Ren Xiaosu had killed his relative, and importantly, Wang Kongyang was a meticulous person. Even though Ren Xiaosu was very good at acting like he wasn't the one who killed the man, he still got targeted by Wang Kongyang. After that, Yan Liuyuan told Ren Xiaosu that even after he had set off to the Jing Mountains, Wang Kongyang still persisted and even led a team to try to arrest him. If it weren't for Zhang Jinglan, Yan Liuyuan and the others would probably have been put in danger. The cause of this grudge was because Ren Xiaosu had killed someone. However, Ren Xiaosu did not have any regrets about doing it. Since he had already killed that man, so be it. However, he never expected Wang Kongyang would survive the collapse of Stronghold 113. Furthermore, he even fled north and became a bandit boss. And he turned out to be a supernatural being too. Yang Xiaojun asked, "How's his relationship with Su Xianchu?" "I remember Su Xianchu saying that he didn't have any friends in Stronghold 113. Ren Xiaosu said, "That eliminates the possibility that he and Wang Kongyang are friends. Old Su wouldn't lie to me about that." Su Jinyuan looked at Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun's expressions and realized they really knew Su Xianchu. At the beginning, he thought Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun might have been lying. "Have you seen him use his superpower before?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "Nope." Su Jinyuan shook his head. "When we were fighting the other bandits, he would usually just stand behind and not need to do anything." Ren Xiaosu nodded and said, "No wonder y'all are so different from the other bandits. Wang Kongyang used to be an army officer, so it's no surprise that he can manage a gang of bandits as well." "Boss, what should we do?" Su Jinyuan asked. "Should we take refuge in the valley until the dust settles?" Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "He's only one supernatural being. There's two of us here, so there's nothing to be afraid of." Not only was he not afraid, but Ren Xiaosu even wanted to seek out Wang Kongyang so he could replicate his power. Remember, he still had a perfect skill duplication scroll in his hands. It was not worth learning from Yang Xiaojun since the conjured sniper rifle was only going to be useful in the hands of a perfect firearms proficiency user. Even if he learned her power, he could only use it as an artillery weapon at most. So it would be great if Wang Kongyang's superpower turned out to be quite useful. Ren Xiaosu walked towards the brick kiln and shouted to Jin Lan, "Hurry up! Have some people push the bricks to the north side. Bandits are coming to attack us. Build the defenses. The enemy might arrive tonight. It might be a little too late to build the defenses now, but they had to win this battle no matter what." Jin Lan and the others had been holding it in for a long time. When they heard they were going to fight, their eyes lit up. "Boss, how are we going to fight this battle?" Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and said, "Fight however you like." Yang Xiaojun grinned as she looked at Ren Xiaosu from behind. She felt this could be the most interesting stretch in the 18 years of her life. Yang Xiaojun turned around and walked towards the wilderness. She did not need to stay here. A sniper was a lone wolf that transcended the confines of the wasteland. A lone wolf should do what a lone wolf did best. The wasteland was vast and boundless. Yang Xiaojun walked into the distance, stepping on the desolate ground underfoot as the turbulent waters of the river flowed next to her. She would have to kill a lot of people tonight, but this was the first time she was going to pull the trigger to protect someone. What a night to look forward to! When Ren Xiaosu was done giving them orders, he could not find Yang Xiaojun. "Have you all seen, have you all seen your boss lady?" "Nope," Jin Lan replied. "I saw her heading into the Wild Thunders earlier," Su Jinyuan answered. Ren Xiaosu grunted in acknowledgement. It looked like Yang Xiaojun had already gone to familiarize herself with the terrain. An outstanding sniper would never remain at only one vantage point on a real battlefield. If their position were discovered, they would have to leave that spot as quickly as possible. Otherwise, they would get shot dead by the approaching enemy. Hence, a sniper's combat role was a proactive one. Fortunately, Su Jinyuan said there were no snipers among the bandits to the north. This would greatly reduce the danger to Yang Ziajin. Moreover, Yang Ziajin had her advantage as well. Sniper rifles could be very heavy. If a sniper used a high-caliber rifle, the rifle would become a heavy burden while they were operating. Some sniper rifles could even weigh up to 20.9 kilograms. This was equivalent to carrying 2 bags of rice and running wildly in the wilderness. Even an adult man would find that difficult to bear. But Yang Ziajin was different. When she needed to retreat, she could just put away her sniper rifle and move around freely. Moreover, supernatural beings were physically stronger, and their movements were also swift. A supernatural being who was also an elite sniper was definitely the most terrifying existence on a battlefield. After eating 2 pieces of cornbread, Ren Xiaosu hunkered down behind the defensive fortifications and closed his eyes to get some rest. Honestly, he also thought it would be more suitable for him to fight out in the wilderness. But before the bandits here experienced what a real battle was really like, they would still be just a mob. If there were no one to maintain their morale, more than half of these people would probably run away before the battle even began. Jin Lan went up to Ren Xiaosu and asked softly, "Boss, if Boss Lady's superpower is to pull a sniper rifle out of thin air, what's yours?" Until today, Ren Xiaosu had purely relied on brute strength to deal with them without resorting to using his superpowers. So Jin Lan and the others were all guessing what Ren Xiaosu's power was. Ren Xiaosu glanced at the bandits. "When those northern bandits arrive, you'll find out. Bring that box of grenades over and put it next to me." The bandits around him were stunned. Weren't they just talking about superpowers? Why did he suddenly mention the grenades? Could his power be related to grenades? Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu said, "They're here. Prepare for battle. The enemy's coming from the northwest, not the north." Su Jinyuan looked into the wilderness and then asked, "Boss, where are they?" The wilderness in front of them was clearly pitch black, so where was the enemy supposed to be coming from? They did not know how Ren Xiaosu could have discovered them. In fact, Ren Xiaosu had sent out his shadow clone earlier tonight. Since they did not have any scouts, Ren Xiaosu had to use it to act as one. Therefore, Ren Xiaosu knew they had arrived when his shadow clone encountered the enemy. However, he did not expose his shadow clone and waited for the enemy to get closer. Then Su Jinyuan watched Ren Xiaosu grab a grenade with his right hand and remove the pin before reaching his hand into a shadow. The shadow was like a doorway that seemingly allowed him to put his hand into another dimension. Jin Lan, Su Jinyuan, and the others were watching this sight in a daze. They did not understand what Ren Xiaosu was doing. The bandits in the distance were quietly advancing. In order to hide their movements, they even took a detour to change their route, then abandoned their motorcycles to advance on foot. As they walked in the dark, the bandit farthest forward suddenly saw a hand extend out of thin air within the darkness and throw a grenade at his feet. The bandit was stunned. By the time he realized what was going on, he only had time to shout, "Fuck!" Right after, Su Jinyuan and the others heard a grenade explode nearly a kilometer away. Everyone looked at Ren Xiaosu in shock. What kind of power was that? Throwing a grenade remotely. They were not the only ones shocked, even their enemies were shocked. The gang of bandits who were advancing towards the settlement did not understand what was going on. They thought they might have stepped on a landmine. But how could there be landmines in the valley? The farthest a grenadier could throw a grenade was only about 100 meters or so. For example, the best record in the Yang Consortium's army for grenade tossing was only 102 meters. Yet Ren Xiaosu had thrown a grenade from a kilometer away? Surely an impenetrable fortress couldn't exist in the face of such power, right? But why did this power feel really strange? At this moment, the enemy in the distance was still unsure of who was attacking them, and neither could they see where the attack had come from. There wasn't even an opponent they could fight back against. Suddenly, the boom of a sniper rifle thundered through the sky. It was just like the rumbling of a large overcast cloud. The sound of that high-caliber sniper rifle could even be heard from several kilometers away. The grenade Ren Xiaosu threw had pointed Yang Xiaojin in the direction of the enemy, and the explosion gave her illumination. Su Jinyuan and the others understood that to be their boss lady making her move, but they still could not figure out where Yang Xiaojin was at this moment. Jin Lan and the others roared excitedly as everyone clutched their automatic rifles. However, after waiting for a long time, there were still no signs of their enemies charging. In the minds of Jin Lan and the others, the battle should play out with them waiting for the enemy to arrive at their doorstep. When that happened, everyone would mow them down with their rifles like they were fire-breathing dragons, and there would be blood splattering everywhere. After the enemy collapsed, Jin Lan could rally everyone to chase after them. The fantasy alone was already beyond exciting. In the end, the boom of the sniper rifle kept ringing out, and the grenades kept exploding. Meanwhile, they were like cheerleaders. After the battle had gone on for some time, they still did not see any signs of their enemies. As Ren Xiaosu threw the grenades, he used his shadow clone to observe from the shadows. However, he found it a little strange that the number of bandits here did not seem quite right. Weren't there supposed to be over 600 people? Why were there only about 200 or so of them? Shit! Ren Xiaosu shouted to Zhang Yihan, "Be careful of the northeast. The enemy might have split into two groups." Zhang Yihan and the others immediately turned to look northeast. There were a series of gullies cutting across the middle of the valley over there. If the enemy came from that direction, they could hide in the gullies and advance on them, making it difficult to guard. As Ren Xiaosu spoke, he sent his shadow clone into the battlefield. The shadow clone was rapidly taking lives in the darkness of the night with the black saber in hand. Ren Xiaosu had to quickly kill off the enemies in this direction, as the rest of them who were heading here from the other direction were probably going to arrive soon. Ren Xiaosu and the others who had thought the northwest attack would be the main battlefield were now realizing they had anticipated it wrong. When his shadow clone encountered these bandits, Ren Xiaosu immediately determined they had at least a few hundred people in the group. As such, he believed they were Wang Kongjiang's main force. However, Wang Kongyang was even more ruthless. He actually used these 200 people as cannon fodder to attract the firepower of the enemy. Wang Kongyang clearly knew these 200 people would die here, but he did not care. Ren Xiaosu thought to himself, no wonder that guy gained a foothold in the valley. Not only does he use his superpower, but he also has a cunning and vicious mind. At this moment, the firing of the sniper rifle suddenly stopped before the bandits in the northwest were all dead. Ren Xiaosu immediately understood that Yang Xiaojin had also noticed that something was amiss and was quickly shifting her position in search of a new commanding point for her firepower suppression. Without needing to communicate in words, Yang Xiaojin believed Ren Xiaosu's shadow clone would finish off the remnants of the defeated bandits in the northwest. Seeing that more than half of the 200 bandits in the northwest had already died, the remaining ones were so scared their hearts nearly exploded. This unknown shadow that had come out of nowhere could neither be driven away nor killed. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu knew that if Wang Kongjiang's main forces were really coming from a different direction, his village couldn't defeat them in a direct confrontation. Su Jinyuan had said that Wang Kongyang had heavy firepower on his side that included RPGs as well. He had to think of another way. He had to avoid a direct confrontation at their settlement. As for Jin Lan and the others, Ren Xiaosu could only bet on Yang Xiaojin arriving in time to support them. Jin Lan looked northeast into the darkness and said, "There's a lot of gullies over there. If the enemies are hiding in them, I'm afraid that Boss Lady's sniper rifle won't be effective. Can they really be so familiar with the terrain?" Zhang Yihan asked, "If they haven't been here before, they'll probably lose their way in the gullies, right?" Su Jinyuan sighed and said, "This is all my fault. I should have persuaded that brother to stay behind. He must have revealed our plans and informed the gang of bandits that we have a sniper. That's why their main forces purposely chose to approach from where the sniper can't spot them. Besides, he worked here for more than 20 days. He's surely familiarized himself with the area already. He always went out to explore the terrain at night. Jin Lan was silent for a moment. You weren't in the wrong either. We can only say that everyone makes their own choices, so there's no need to feel guilty over it. As the saying goes, while the general is on horseback, do as you wish. Haha. Next to him, Zhang Yihan slotted bullets into a magazine. Jin Lan, I didn't know you were a cultured person. Jin Lan said modestly, I did attend a few years of school. We can't just rely on boss ladies sniping to hold them off. We're grown-ass men. We're holding guns in our hands, and we can kill our enemies too. Zhang Yihan said heroically, weren't you all disappointed that our enemies could not charge at us just now? We're going to be charging at them instead very soon. Don't be a coward when the time comes. But right at this moment, metallic sounds clanged in the darkness. The strange metallic sounds were like dagger axes striking against each other, but it also sounded like someone was striking iron with a hammer. This sound came abruptly, yet it sounded extremely powerful. Suddenly, a fog started spreading. It felt like a gigantic creature was charging at them from the darkness. Then, clickety-clacking could be heard. It grew louder in the nothingness and slowly increased in rhythm. Right after that, a black steam locomotive sped through the fog, shattering it. Fuck! Jin Lan roared angrily, where the hell did this train come from? The consortiums had trains as well, but they were limited to a very small number of places and were used for transporting minerals and supplies. It was not that the consortiums could not afford to build a railway system, but that earthquakes in the northwest and southwest happened far too frequently. As a result, it would be extremely expensive to maintain the system. Sometimes, newly built railroad tracks would get damaged by the next day. How could anything even withstand earthquakes that could shatter two strongholds? However, Jin Lan and the others did know of the existence of trains. Jin Lan had also seen blurry pictures of them before in the schoolbooks. It was just that he could not figure out where this train had come from. The metallic clanging was made by the train as it moved forward on a metal railroad track that materialized segment by segment below it. After the rails materialized, they would automatically pave themselves at the bottom of the black locomotive. As the train moved forward, the tracks behind would disappear while fresh tracks reappeared in front of it. The train had 3 carriages attached to the forward engine. Jin Lan instinctively fired at the locomotive but could only send some sparks flying as the bullets hit the train. Dodge! Jin Lan roared. But the train kept charging at their simple fortifications in an attempt to completely crush their defenses. Instead of the enemy showing up, they were greeted by a giant steel monster. The train was zooming. Before Jin Lan and the others could dodge, the train had already crashed into a short brick wall. The brick walls crumbled into pieces like tofu. This was the power of a supernatural being. In the era of the rise of gods, the power of supernatural beings was getting more and more powerful. Who knew what kind of shocking things could happen in the future? As many of the bandits could not avoid it in time, they died from the impact of the cold and unfeeling train. After the train brushed past Jin Lan and the others who managed to escape unscathed, they could only watch helplessly as the steam locomotive crashed into the village where the refugees were located. Over there were the mud houses, the newly built brick houses, and also their fellow villagers who had cooked for them. Jin Lan watched this happen in a daze. He saw the new houses turn into a heap of ruins before his very eyes while the refugees inside were pinned under the bricks. But the steam locomotive that seemed to have come from hell remained completely undamaged. Gunshots rang out, but it wasn't Jin Lan and the others who had fired their weapons. Under the cover of the steam locomotive, the bandits to the northeast finally broke out of the gullies and charged at Jin Lan's group. One of Jin Lan's squad mates next to him was shot, and blood started flowing out of his wound. It was over. Everything seemed to be finished. They had worked hard to make the bricks and build the houses, but they ended up being destroyed so easily by the enemy. They had been greeting each other as brothers all these days, but their brothers ended up dying here by their sides. Su Jinyuan hid behind a heap of broken bricks and said in a daze, "Who saw boss?" They only just realized that Ren Xiaosu had disappeared at some point. "Where's boss? Who saw where the boss went?" Behind the trembling voices that were asking this, the loneliness that stemmed from the fear of being abandoned and left behind started spreading. Did boss abandon us and run away? Gunfire intensified. The enemy was getting closer and closer. Some of the bandits started fleeing into the wilderness behind them. Although everyone felt a sense of belonging to this place, no one would risk their lives for it. That wonderful hope ultimately could not win against their survival instincts. Although some of them left, there were also others who remained behind. Zhang Yihan suddenly spat out, "I don't believe that he would abandon us and run away. He's gotta have something more important to handle." "Then what should we do?" one of the bandits asked. "Fucking kill them!" Zhang Yihan roared, "Aren't we also holding guns? They actually destroyed the houses that I put in so much effort to build. Fire at them! Let's get revenge for the houses and our brothers." Perhaps the change in them wasn't very big, but it was enough to make them willing to pick up their guns and fight for their survival. Even Ren Xiaosu would probably not have expected this group of bandits to push themselves and counterattack in such a desperate situation. When they started to fight back through their broken defensive line, the enemy immediately slowed and they started taking casualties. Bullets on the battlefield did not discern between friend from foe. The intelligence of humans was vividly portrayed in war, and the appearance of firearms and explosives brought about a great transformation in the history of human warfare. Zhang Yihan hid behind collapsed bricks and fired at the enemy with his automatic rifle. This band of bandits who had no strategy in place were actually holding off the enemy. However, someone was commanding the enemy forces from the rear. After a brief adjustment, they got used to the firing patterns employed by Zhang Yihan's squad. Some of them silently crawled on the ground and advanced. This way, they could reduce the chances of being hit by bullets. The others would continue to charge forward until Zhang Yihan's group revealed themselves and fired at them. When they did that, the enemy bandits who were crawling on the ground would fire in short spurts to cover their fellow bandits. Slowly, Zhang Yihan and the others were getting suppressed by the enemy's tactics again. Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojin's training had only made them united and planted seeds of faith in their minds. The training was not a magical solution, so it could not make this group of bandits who did not even possess any military knowledge become braver. They were being suppressed by the lack of experience. It was not something they could be trained on in a short time. Wang Kongyang had fought many tough battles with his bandit gang, and they had even undergone short-term military training with him. Zhang Yihan panted and said, "We can't beat them. It looks like we're going to die here. What should we do then?" Jin Lan suddenly laughed. It was clearly a hopeless situation, but he was still laughing. "Why don't we surrender?" Zhang Yihan spat, "If you wanna surrender, go ahead. No wonder there were only 20 bandits in your gang, and y'all were even leading such shitty lives. So it was because you're a leader with no balls." Jin Lan was infuriated. "I was only fucking kidding. Don't you fucking criticize me." Then Jin Lan got up and started attacking. The idiot managed to make the enemy retreat for a moment when he did that. But no matter how hard they tried, they were still losing. "Hey, where did boss and boss lady go?" Zhang Yihan sighed and said, "If they don't come back soon, we're really gonna die here." At this moment, Yang Xiaojin's slender figure was running at full speed in the wilderness. The gullies on the ground were no obstacle to her. She was getting closer to the gunshots in the northeast. As she ran, she looked for gunfire that lit up the night in front of her. Yang Xiaojin was panting heavily. Even she would have to try her best to adjust her breathing when she was running with all her might. She could have had a more relaxed role on the battlefield, but she knew there wasn't enough time. Yang Xiaojin knew there were people waiting for her. A second later, Yang Xiaojin stopped on a dime in front of a mound and conjured her sniper rifle. She took only an instant. Deep breath, She lowered her heart rate quickly and illogically against her body's homeostatic responses. Following, her dynamic visual acuity seemingly froze time from her perspective. At this moment, all the anger in her transformed into an arrow from the gods. Yang Ziajin slowly exhaled the air in her lungs and pulled the trigger according to the rhythm of her breathing. With a loud bang, the sound of the sniper rifle spread across the battlefield again. The huge bullet traveled for nearly 1,000 meters and arrived at the center of the battlefield after what felt like a long passage of time. The bullet penetrated the chest of a bandit who was making an attack. However, it did not stop moving even after that. It continued through and penetrated a second bandit behind before disappearing into the night. The thin grey fog that had first appeared when the steam locomotive arrived suddenly turned into a bloody mist. The sprays of blood that bloomed formed beautiful shapes in the air. When Jin Lan and Zhang Yihan heard the sound of the sniper rifle, their hearts skipped a beat. The long-awaited gunshots had finally returned. They quietly poked their heads out and discovered that the enemy who had readjusted the rhythm of their attack was now getting torn apart one by the shots. "Boss lady is so brutal!" Jin Lan gasped in amazement. From their vantage point, they could see the enemies were sent flying one after another by the powerful force of the bullets. The sprays of blood were like flowers blooming in the dark of night. At this moment, Yang Ziajin was lying prone on a mound. Only by doing so could she stabilize her body against the high frequency of her shots. The formerly cap-wearing girl was not bothered by how dirty the ground was. She only cared if her bullets could reach the other side of the riverbank and bring death to the enemy. This was what a sniper was. She would only feel safe when her body was in contact with the ground. It was only at this moment that thoughts of being encaged by her clan connections and the mystery of her parents' death no longer lingered on her mind. In this moment, she was just a sniper. A sniper who could dominate the wilderness battlefield. Amid the rhythmic bangs of the sniper rifle, Zhang Yihan acted like he was on steroids. "Everyone, attack them without mercy. Fucking kill them." Silent, Su Jinyuan fired as he felt his blood boiling. He could even feel himself getting goosebumps as he listened to the sniper rifle consistently ring out. This was a fight he had never experienced before. Su Jinyuan never thought a small battle like this could be so exciting. Only Jin Lan was asking doubtfully, "Boss lady is here, but where's boss? Why haven't we seen him yet?" "I might not know where boss is," Zhang Yihan laughed maniacally while saying, "but I know that he definitely ain't gonna miss his chance to end this battle." Right then, gunshots suddenly rang out from behind enemy lines. Zhang Yihan instantly reacted. "Boss is behind the enemy." Holy fuck, Jin Lan did not know what to say. He had thought Yang Ziajin was very aggressive, but it turned out that Ren Xiao was even more ferocious than her. He actually ran to the rear of the enemy all by himself? Was he trying to cut off the enemy's retreat? Su Jinyuan was also a little confused. Since boss and boss lady are both so fierce, who do you think wears the pants at home? Someone scolded him with a chuckle, "Hey, we're fighting right now. Stop shooting the shit." At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was rapidly approaching the back lines of the enemy from the flank. He was dashing in an arced path. Due to the angle of his approach, he was leaning close to the ground like he was a speeding motorcycle making a turn. The shots fired by the enemy in their attempt to stop him only sent bullets into the dirt. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu had already deterred and arrived at the rear of the enemy's formation. "I've surrounded all of you. You. This was a very wise move. After all, Ren Xiaosu was just a normal human being, so how could he possibly hold up against a few hundred people shooting at him? If he even tried to get close to them, the enemies would quickly release a barrage of gunfire on him. Even a mosquito might get killed by the crossfire. But the enemy was confused. Where did your initial bravery go? Didn't you heroically declare you had all of us surrounded? Fucking attack us then! He's playing for time, someone shouted. That's right. Someone said, this kid has been distracting all this time so that we can't concentrate on our attack at the front. But he's not trying to get close. He's only trying to attract our firepower in a bid to stall for time. But what's he waiting for? A bandit wondered. Right at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared on the horizon a distance away. The shadow was able to leap over 10 meters in a single bound. It was extremely terrifying. The heavy and hurried footsteps were getting closer and closer. This was the reinforcement Ren Xiaosu had been trying to buy time for. It had come from afar. When some of the bandits saw the shadow approaching, they fired at it. However, the shadow did not dodge or evade and took all of the gunfire head-on. "What is this thing?" one of the bandits exclaimed. "Why isn't it afraid of bullets?" "Oh shit, run!" But it was too late to escape now. The shadow that was just like a wild bull collided with the crowd in an instant. The powerful inertia struck the bandits like a cannonball, sending a row of them flying into the air like toys and dolls thrown by a truck in a crash. The bandit who had been hit directly felt all his bones shattering before he was sent flying into the air uncontrollably. The bandits were sent flying into the air one after another like they were trapezists of a circus. However, they were the worst trapezists ever in history. The bandits no longer had the presence of mind to fire their weapons. When a strength that was strong enough to crush them appeared, these bandits plunged into panic. The strange shadow's ability at slaughtering its enemy was too strong. They could not even fight back. Away from the battlefield, Ren Xiaosu was controlling his shadow clone to charge recklessly through the crowd as he looked for Wang Qingjiang's presence. Due to the shadow clone continuously getting shot, Ren Xiaosu was constantly enduring the pain that was passed on from his shadow clone to him. He was sweating profusely from his head and on his back due to the pain he had to endure. Ren Xiaosu was still looking for Wang Qingjing. To catch a thief, he had to catch the king. Ren Xiaosu kept moving at high speeds. Stray bullets on the battlefield were flying around everywhere and were impossible to defend against. He had used the nanomachines to shield himself from the bullets twice already. When the bullets hit him, they only managed to scrape his skin, they could not penetrate past the defensive structure formed by the nanomachines. But even after searching for a long time, he still could not see any signs of Wang Qingjing. Jin Lan, who was farthest in front on the battlefield, discovered that the enemy was beginning to panic. The enemies who were not being commanded had become flustered when a powerful force appeared behind them. With Yang Xiaojin's suppressive fire covering them, Zhang Yihan and the other bandits even dared to charge from behind the broken defensive line to launch a counterattack. And the bewildered enemies started to fall. But even now, Ren Xiaosu still did not see Wang Qingjing. Ren Xiaosu was puzzled. Could it be that Wang Qingjing wasn't here? That couldn't be right. The train that appeared out of nowhere was clearly Wang Qingjing's doing. Actually, when he first saw the steam locomotive, one of Ren Xiaosu's early doubts was answered. In the earlier days, there were always rumors spreading among the refugees in Stronghold 113's town that someone had seen a moving train materializing from nothingness out in the wilderness. That was the power of a supernatural being. At that time, Ren Xiaosu was still very envious. This was the earliest rumor being talked about in town regarding supernatural beings. It went on for so long that Ren Xiaosu even got sick of hearing it. Many people said the refugee must have been feeling sick and was only seeing things in his trance. That train never appeared a second time. Ren Xiaosu used to wonder about whether there were other supernatural beings in Stronghold 113. But no one had ever seen them before. Now that he thought about it, the train that appeared in the wilderness back then must have been Wang Qingjing testing his power, right? So the rumors were true. Judging by the time Wang Qingjing first became a supernatural being, he was most likely one of the earliest people to do so. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu realized Wang Qingjing must have escaped when he saw that the situation was hopeless. Ren Xiaosu looked towards the valley in the north, in the hopes that he might spot Wang Qingjing fleeing through the gullies. The ravines would serve as Wang Qingjing's shield. Ren Xiaosu stopped searching for him here and started running north, trying his luck. If his judgment were right, he might still be in time to catch that guy. After running for just 2 kilometers, Ren Xiaosu suddenly saw a figure crawling out of a gully in the distance. They were about a kilometer away from each other. Ren Xiaosu confirmed that it was Wang Kongyang and that he had indeed escaped ahead of time. The bandit gang this person had painstakingly built was about to break apart, but none of that seemed worth mentioning to him. When he saw the shadow clone arriving, he abandoned all of his burdens and fled by himself. That was because the moment Wang Kongyang saw the shadow clone, he thought it was Su Xianchu who had arrived. In Wang Kongyang's opinion, if 3 supernatural beings Ren Xiaosu, Su Xianchu and Yang Xiaojun fought him alone, he would definitely lose. The bandit who had escaped from Ren Xiaosu's place had told Wang Kongyang that Ren Xiaosu was from Stronghold 178 and that he was also a good friend of Su Xianchu. At that time, Wang Kongyang knew that even though the description was probably an exaggeration, Ren Xiaosu and Zhang Jinglan were actually on very good terms. If Ren Xiaosu were really there to carry out a mission for Stronghold 178, then Wang Kongyang probably couldn't gain a foothold in the valley. Even if he did not go looking for Ren Xiaosu would come and look for him. Wang Kongyang was unable to figure out what exactly the truth was. All he wanted was to take advantage of the fact that Ren Xiaosu was not ready yet and try to kill him in order to eliminate any chance of future trouble. But regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he would have to leave the valley and head to the central plains where it was a larger world. Therefore, when Wang Kongyang heard Ren Xiaosu's name get mentioned, he already had the thought to abandon the bandits under him. It would be impossible for him to bring them to the central plains with him, nor did he think they were worthy. Ren Xiaosu pursued him from behind. He had thought he could catch up with Wang Kongyang easily, but at this moment, the mysterious and strange black steam locomotive suddenly drove into the wilderness, completely ignoring the rugged valley as though it were driving on flat ground. What the hell? Why was there someone following him? When Wang Kongyang was escaping, he did not notice that someone was following him. In fact, he did not think anyone would have noticed him. But the moment he turned around and saw Ren Xiaosu, he frowned. At this moment, the two of them were truly pitted against each other one-on-one in the true sense of the phrase. Wang Kongyang wondered if he should control the train to turn around and kill Ren Xiaosu. As one of the earliest people to turn superhuman, his physical fitness would definitely be better than Ren Xiaosu's. However, he gave up on the idea after careful consideration. Although he was one of the earliest people to become a supernatural being, and his physical fitness was definitely one of the best as well, that did not mean that Ren Xiaosu would not be hiding killer moves. Wang Kongyang was unwilling to take this risk. He held the train with one hand and calmly turned around to stare at Ren Xiaosu. It was as though he were trying to burn Ren Xiaosu's image into his mind. A strong gust of wind was blowing past him, making his clothes flutter non-stop. Wait a minute. Wang Kongyang realized Ren Xiaosu seemed to be gaining on him. He suddenly felt like something was amiss and hurriedly used all of his power to drive the steam locomotive faster in hopes of ditching Ren Xiaosu completely. During this time, Wang Kongyang had been leading a very unhappy life. He had become the bandit leader very quickly after arriving here, and that should have been quite good. But before long, he came to realize that problems were deeply rooted here in the valley due to the influence of several organizations. So it seemed that even being a bandit was a really stressful job. When he wanted to kill Ren Xiaosu, he ended up losing all the bandits under him after Ren Xiaosu joined forces with Su Xianchu. All he wanted now was to leave this place, yet Ren Xiaosu continued chasing after him like a vengeful spirit. Wang Kongyang took out his pistol and fired it at Ren Xiaosu. However, they were so far apart that Ren Xiaosu was not within his effective range. But Wang Kongyang felt a burst of joy when he realized Ren Xiaosu was gradually slowing. He was probably running out of stamina. Should he take advantage now that Ren Xiaosu was exhausted and kill him? Forget it, never mind. What if he was just faking it? As expected, Wang Kongyang decided to give up on killing him. When Ren Xiaosu saw that Wang Kongyang did not take any action, he started chasing after him again. The two of them were constantly jockeying. When Ren Xiaosu sped up, Wang Kongyang clenched his teeth and went faster too. Actually, Ren Xiaosu was already cursing Wang Kongyang in his head. There was a limit to his stamina. This steam locomotive was traveling at about the speed of a normal train, and its maximum speed was about 120 km per hour. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu's current strength and dexterity were roughly 3 times that of an ordinary person's. His top speed was only slightly more than 100 km per hour. But the stamina of humans was limited. That limit applied to Ren Xiaosu as well. Ren Xiaosu kept trying to trick Wang Kongyang to turn back, but that bastard was simply too smart and cautious. He wasn't taking the bait. Forget it, I'm not gonna chase anymore. Ren Xiaosu was panting heavily as he prepared to stop chasing. He had wanted to activate City Crusher to chase after Wang Kongyang, but the problem was that it would only last for 30 seconds. And the nanomachines were no longer operating at full capacity. What if he caught up to him but got beaten up instead? His shadow clone was still assisting Jin Lan and the others to kill their enemies at this moment. Without his shadow clone, who knew how many more people would die back there? So Ren Xiaosu decided to give up the chase. There would still be many more chances in the future. However, he suddenly remembered he still needed to do something. Ren Xiaosu said to the palace in his mind, "Use the perfect skill duplication scroll." The voice from the palace answered, "Currently out of effective range." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "What's the effective range?" 500 meters. Ren Xiaosu looked at the distance between him and Wang Kongyang, then decisively activated City Crusher to chase after him. When Wang Kongyang saw this, he nearly died of fright. How could Ren Xiaosu be so fast? But before he could think of a way to handle him, he saw Ren Xiaosu suddenly turn around and run off. Wang Kongyang got farther away as he rode on the steam locomotive. He still could not figure out what Ren Xiaosu was up to. Ren Xiaosu clearly had the strength to catch up to him, so why didn't he continue pursuing him? But he couldn't possibly know that Ren Xiaosu only had a 30-second limit for his power. Why would he not quickly run away after the 30 seconds were up? Would he rather get beaten up? At this moment, Ren Xiaosu heard the voice from the palace saying in his mind, about to copy the target's master-level skill or superpower. If you do not have the corresponding advanced level skill after copying a master-level skill, you will not be able to learn it. Randomly copied target's superpower steam locomotive. Do you want to learn it? Ren Xiaosu was ecstatic. Yes. Earlier on, Ren Xiaosu was worried he would end up copying some garbage skill, but he did not expect he would directly duplicate the opponent's superpower. The sadness of his past skill duplication attempts had been swept away with this. That jumping rope skill, mahjong playing skill, deception skill, and so on, all of that bad luck seemed to have gone far away from him. But in an instant, Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Could this be the result of Yan Liuyuan's wish for him? If that were really the case, Yan Liuyuan would probably have to suffer the backlash soon, right? But what was the backlash going to be? Would it be dangerous? Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu felt his joy retreating. He wanted to go back to check on Liuyuan. Perhaps he could find an opportunity to bring Yan Liuyuan and the others out here into the wilderness. But he did not know when Qing Zhen would mount a rescue for Luolan. Surely it wouldn't be too long from now, right? At this moment, Yan Liuyuan was sitting in the yard playing Fight the Landlord with Wang Fugui and the others. When he saw the lousy hand that he had been dealt, like missing a card to complete a straight and his high card being a king, he sank deep into thought. It wasn't just this hand that was bad. He had been very unlucky throughout the night. Seeing how Wang Fugui was winning every game, why did it seem like all of the luck had gone to Wang Fugui instead? He shouldn't have encountered anything particularly dangerous, right? Yan Liuyuan muttered to himself. Ever since Bro's nanomachines enabled him to block bullets, I haven't experienced any serious backlashes. But if the backlash is just me getting really bad hands, what sort of situation could bro have encountered? Yan Liuyuan had a look at the poker cards in his hand again and exclaimed, what the hell? Yan Liuyuan and Ren Xiaosu had yet to realize that their powers would complement each other. If not for Ren Xiaosu, Yan Liuyuan would be plagued by the backlash of making wishes. And without Yan Liuyuan, Ren Xiaosu would probably not have been able to successfully copy the steam locomotive either. In the wilderness, Ren Xiaosu attempted to summon the strange train out. A black fog immediately appeared out of nothing as a black steam locomotive materialized out of thin air. The clanking of steel was especially pleasing to the ears in the wilderness. With a chugging sound, black smoke billowed out from the chimney of the steam locomotive. However, Ren Xiaosu was suddenly stunned by what he saw. He carefully counted the carriages behind the steam locomotive. Wang Kenjiang's steam locomotive only had 4, so why did he have as many as 16? Ren Xiaosu's eyes kept twitching when he heard those thanks. He did not even gain a single gratitude token from it. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu wanted to lay all his cards on the table. That was not Su Xianchu's shadow clone but his. But Ren Xiaosu eventually managed to hold back from doing so because he still had not thought of how to give Su Xianchu an explanation yet. Ren Xiaosu said to the shadow clone, "Old Su, go back and report to Commander Zhang that we've defeated a large bandit gang here in the valley. There used to be 3 large bandit gangs that were active in the valley, and now, one of them had been eliminated. The bandits who had escaped might go on to join the other bandit gangs, but this battle here was a complete victory." When Jin Lan heard that, he thought that Ren Xiaosu was getting Su Xianchu to go back to report about their contributions. However, Ren Xiaosu coughed and said, "I got old Su to return to Stronghold 178 to put in some good words for all of us. The commander might be happy when he hears what old Su has to say and immediately recruit y'all to join Stronghold 178, so you should know what to do now, shouldn't you?" While Ren Xiaosu waited for everyone to thank him, he watched Jin Lan, Zhang Yihan and the others started bowing to the shadow at a 90-degree angle and saying, "Thank you, Master Su." Ren Xiaosu was speechless. Are they fucking rebelling? Yang Xiaojin walked over from the wilderness looking extremely exhausted. Tonight, she had made some significant contributions to the battle. If it weren't for her, Jin Lan and the others would be dead. Yang Xiaojin looked at Ren Xiaosu and asked, "How many of our people were lost or injured?" The excitement on Jin Lan's face immediately faded as he sighed and said, "More than 100 of our brothers have died. The houses we just built have been destroyed, while our fellow villagers have also died and been injured. Let's treat our brothers' wounds first." Ren Xiaosu took out 10 bottles of black medicine and handed them to Jin Lan. "Take the bullets out of their wounds first. This is a secret remedy passed down through my family. You can apply it directly to the wound. 1 bottle is enough for 5 to 6 uses. Just make sure it isn't drunk. It might be gratifying to win the battle, but what about the aftermath? The dead could not be resurrected." Zhang Yihan stood in the devastated wasteland looking a little confused. The refugees in the distance were crying. More than half of the settlement's mud houses had been toppled by the steam locomotive, while none of the brick houses remained standing. Even the ditches had given way and were now a total mess. It would be great if even half of the crops they planted could end up germinating. Zhang Yihan slowly walked through the crowd. Some of his injured brothers were crying out in pain, while the ones who were okay stayed around to comfort them. When he walked past a refugee, a child cried out at him, "It's all your fault. Those bandits came here because of all y'all." But before Zhang Yihan could speak, the mother slapped her child. "Don't you run your mouth." The child's mother looked at Zhang Yihan and said, "I know that y'all are good people, so I won't blame you." Zhang Yihan was stunned and did not say anything. Ren Xiaosu called out to him, "You regretting it?" Zhang Yihan was stunned again, then suddenly said, "Actually, I don't feel that sad. After so many years, Everyone knows what this world is really like. It's all too common to see people dying. Even when my father passed away, I didn't cry. Then what are you thinking about? Ren Xiaosu asked. Zhang Yihan said calmly, I'm just thinking, if we were stronger, could we have prevented this suffering? Ren Xiaosu looked at him seriously and said, the houses that we built have all been destroyed. Jin Lan, who was standing next to them, said, we can still rebuild them even though they've been destroyed. I've checked, and the brick kiln is fine. Even if something had happened to the brick kiln, we could still build another 1, 2, or even 3 of them. Zhang Yihan suddenly said in a determined tone. Ren Xiaosu was looking at these bandits. Actually, there was nothing they were good at. Most of them did not even attend school and were illiterate. Even though they were bandits, they could not even hold a gun properly. But when he attacked the enemy from their rear just now, the bandits here did not break down. Right now, they were still harboring hopes in the ruins of the settlement. Ren Xiaosu suddenly realized these bandits were probably still useless as of now. But starting from today, their fate was really going to be changed. On the same day, Jin Lan led everyone to carry the wounded back to the mud houses that were still intact. Some of the refugees also took the initiative to help take care of them. At first, they thought that it would be very difficult for the wounded to survive. That was because bacteria these days had become very scary. If anyone received a wound, 90% of them would get infected even in the early spring when the weather was still very cold. Ren Xiaosu's wound had been infected after he got nipped by the sparrow. But they were shocked to discover the black medicine given by Ren Xiaosu was really effective. As soon as it was applied to the wounds of the injured, they claimed their injuries did not hurt anymore. Moreover, their wounds started healing the very next day. The medicine was extremely effective. Everyone looked at Ren Xiaosu with more and more admiration. It was even more so when Jin Lan and the others talked about Ren Xiaosu going behind enemy lines to draw fire to himself. Everyone's eyes were shimmering in admiration when they heard that. To Jin Lan and everyone else, this was the respect Ren Xiaosu had earned through risking his life. They admired him in all sincerity. With the refugees helping to take care of the wounded, Jin Lan and the others had time to make clay bricks again. They salvaged all the usable black bricks from the ruins and restarted the brick kiln. Standing next to Ren Xiaosu, Yang Xiaojun asked him, do you feel these people have more enthusiasm now? Their eyes are all filled with hope. Yes, I can feel it. Ren Xiaosu said emotionally, it's probably because there's no rebuilding without destruction. These people are undergoing a complete change and getting reborn. I'll be teaching them about firearms. Some of them should be suitable for sniper training. They're calm and can endure hardship, Yang Xiaojun said. On this day, Jin Lan and the others would go looking for Yang Xiaojun on and off to ask her when they could start learning about guns and when she would select the candidates for sniper training. The battle had made them see their shortcomings. But most importantly, the powerful fire suppression Yang Xiaojun had displayed during the battle was terrifying. Although everyone knew that it was basically impossible for them to reach Yang Xiaojun's level, their current ambition was to become a sniper. As for how Ren Xiaosu had surrounded all their enemies without fear, that was too far of a goal even for them. Jin Lan, Zhang Yihan and the others did not even dare to think about something like that. Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and said, when the situation here has stabilized, I plan to make a trip back to the stronghold and see if I can bring Liu Yuan and the others here. Yang Xiaojun said with a smile, you've decided that you want to settle down here. Ren Xiaosu nodded. He suddenly asked, have you decided yet? Yang Xiaojun was stunned for a moment. She slipped her hands into her pockets and walked off to the distance. I'm in a good mood today. If Ren Xiaosu had not established this settlement, these people would have been forgotten after their deaths. He took out a pen and a notepad from his storage space and handed them to Yang Xiaojun, saying, make a record of those who are still alive. This will be our future roster. A regular army should first have a roster. It meant that everyone's names would be recorded, and the people on it would be recognized. But when Yang Xiaojun started the recording process, she was put in a dilemma. The bandits did not report their real names to her. Instead, they gave their nicknames such as Rat, Crow, Mud Pit, Rotten Egg. Just by their names alone, you would know they were not respectable people. Yang Xiaojun said patiently, "This roster is only for recording your real names. Besides, aren't your nicknames really?" Jin Lan chuckled and said, "Boss lady, you should allow them to use their nicknames. If you call them by their real names, they might not even respond. All of us are bandits, so we should be called by our nicknames." Yang Xiaojun thought for a moment and said with a smile, "Sure." But at this moment, Su Jinyuan, who was in charge of the clean-up crew, suddenly came up to Ren Xiaosu and said, "Boss, we found something in the ruins." Ren Xiaosu looked at the thing Su Jinyuan was holding. It turned out to be a satellite phone. Seeing that the satellite phone was already damaged, he asked Su Jinyuan curiously, "Where'd you find it?" "It was hidden under the bed in the ruins of our brick house." Su Jinyuan said, "There were 20 people sleeping in that house, and I remember that a bandit called Old Fox slept on that particular bedroll." "Where's Old Fox now?" Ren Xiaosu said, "Get him here, I want to question him." "He's dead." Su Jinyuan said, "That's why I secretly came over to seek boss's instructions." Ren Xiaosu frowned. The satellite phone was definitely not something bandits could own. The owner of this satellite phone must have used it to report information to a consortium. He wondered which consortium this satellite phone was linked to. Was it the Qing Consortium? Or the Zone Consortium? Anything was possible. These two consortiums had been eyeing the valley for a long time now, so they might have planted quite a few spies. "Don't breathe a word about it. If it doesn't belong to Brother Old Fox, his reputation will be tarnished after his death if this matter gets out." Ren Xiaosu said, "This satellite phone could also belong to somebody else." Ren Xiaosu even suspected the phone could be Su Jinyuan's. He had read in a detective novel back at Stronghold 88 that stated how more than 40% of the witnesses and discoverers of a homicide turned out to actually be the real murderer. However, Ren Xiaosu did not bring up that doubt and let Su Jinyuan continue working. Yang Xiaojun walked over and asked, "What's the matter?" "I'm afraid we can't stay here any longer." Ren Xiaosu said, "After we go back and get Yan Liuyuan and the others, we'll head northwest to look for a more secretive location to settle down again. Our activities here have likely been leaked. It's not so bad if it's the Qing Consortium, but if it's the Zone Consortium that planted their spies here, we won't be able to fend them off when their military attacks us here." Yang Xiaojun agreed with him. She did not think it was wrong for Ren Xiaosu to be more cautious. The reason why the Zone Consortium had trouble fighting the bandits was because the bandits were always wandering around. If they settled down here, it would be extremely easy for the Zone Consortium to deal with them. So Ren Xiaosu wanted to head deeper into the mountains and find a new place to re-establish the settlement. In the evening, Jin Lan went to look for Ren Xiaosu. But when he came up to him, he heard Ren Xiaosu whispering to Yang Xiaojun, "The northern bandits have killed so many of our brothers, so I've already contacted Old Su and told him to lead his troops here next week. We'll settle the score with those northern bandits then." Jin Lan was a loudmouth. Once he learned about this, everyone in the settlement would find out about it as well. Ren Xiaosu turned to Jin Lan. "Are you looking for me for something?" "Oh." The dumbfounded Jin Lan came back to his senses and said, "Our brothers wanted to ask you, I forgot what their question was." "Then go and remember before coming back here," Ren Xiaosu snapped at him. After Jin Lan went back to the others, the news of Su Xiancho coming here with troops next week started spreading. The bandits were stunned when they heard this. Everyone was fervently discussing how Master Su would definitely bring others from Stronghold 178 with him. In that case, they would all have to start putting on a good performance from tomorrow onwards so that they would not disgrace their boss, Ren Xiaosu. The days of the post-disaster rebuilding were very dull. It wasn't like people could always wallow in pain and sorrow. Everyone had to continue leading their lives. Jin Lan and the others were working harder than before as they were still thinking about the motorcycles. 3 days later, a figure left the settlement in the middle of the night while everyone was asleep. The settlement was not quiet, as the bandits snored loudly. When the person was about to leave, he suddenly turned around and had a look at the settlement. It was as though he had a reluctant look in his eyes. But after struggling for a minute, he still decided he was going to escape north. He was going to leave this place and head north. But before he could even take 2 steps, that figure saw Ren Xiaosu waiting in the shadows and looking at him with a smile. Ren Xiaosu chuckled, "So it was you. What's your nickname?" "Rat." The bandit named Rat immediately knelt down. I had no choice." "Where did you come from?" Ren Xiaosu asked. Rat replied softly, "I was originally from the bandit lair at Mt Dingyuan in the north. The bandit leader at Mt Dingyuan sent me to Mt Daban. Later on, I came here together with the bandits of Mt Daban, but they also had someone supporting them from the shadows." "You're pretty honest for telling me everything." Ren Xiaosu sighed. Rat was getting a little anxious. "I didn't want to leave either. But even if I stayed, I wouldn't survive when those people at Mt Dingyuan started spreading the news that I'm a spy." This was the awkward situation that a spy had to go through. If the beginning was already a mistake, it would lead to the wrong ending. Rat had also been tempted in recent days to stay here and lead a good life, but how could he still stay? When the time came, both sides would probably not spare him. "Is that thing yours?" Ren Xiaosu asked but did not explicitly mention what he was referring to. "What were you doing with it?" Rat said, "The satellite phone was issued by my previous leader some time ago. It's used for sending intel." Ren Xiaosu nodded in acknowledgement. That matched precisely with what he was asking. But what should he do with Rat? Let him go? Ren Xiaosu was not that kind. But when he thought of the days they spent together, Ren Xiaosu felt a little melancholic. Ren Xiaosu whispered, "If you didn't try to leave or betray me, I might not have done anything to you when the truth came to light." Su Jinyuan was originally a spy too, but he made the right choices. "Rat, let's become bandits again in our next lives. But for now, it's goodbye to you." Ren Xiaosu believed the northern bandits were likely to be supported by the Zone Consortium. Although he had no evidence of that, Zhong Cheng was supposed to bring them to the front lines at Mt Shangying, Mt Lianta and Mt Dingyuan in the original mission plan. Therefore, Ren Xiaosu thought the place Zhong Cheng wanted to bring them to would definitely not be simple. It might even turn out to be the bandit lair controlled by the Zone Consortium. But what was Zhong Cheng planning to do by bringing them to Mt Dingyuan? Was he thinking of putting on an act for the Yang Consortium with his own bandits? Ren Xiaosu felt this matter had more than met the eye. At this moment, Wang Kongyang was walking alone on a path in the valleys and hills of the northern wastes. But as he kept walking, his pace slowed. "Come out," Wang Kongyang said harshly. Ahead of him, a young man walked out from behind a mound. He said to Wang Kongyang with a warm smile, "Chief Wang, I've been waiting here for a long time. Let me introduce myself. I'm Zhong Cheng from the Zone Consortium." Wang Kongyang looked around and asked, "Did you come alone?" "Of course not." Zhong Cheng smiled and said, "How could I come alone when I'm dealing with you?" As soon as Zhong Cheng stopped speaking, another 30 soldiers appeared from behind the mound. However, Wang Kongyang realized these soldiers were acting a little strange. They were behaving unnaturally, as though they were puppets. They didn't act like normal humans. He frowned and said, "Why are you looking for me?" Wang Kongyang was wondering how Zhong Cheng caught wind of his escape. He actually predicted he would pass by here and came here in advance to wait for him? If Ren Xiaosu were present, he would have sensed that something was wrong. Since the spy's satellite phone had been smashed apart during the battle, How could Rat have relayed the intel to Zhong Cheng? You and I have had dealings with each other for quite some time already. Zhong Cheng said with a smile, you're one of the most difficult opponents our Zone Consortium has faced in the valley. I didn't expect you to end up in such a predicament today. Like you know anything. Wang Kongyang sneered. If he weren't afraid of Stronghold 178's strength, Ren Xiaosu would not have been able to do anything to him. And when have I ever had any dealings with you? Oh, I see, so the bandits at MT Ding Yuan are your Zone Consortium's people. It's much easier speaking with smart people. Zhong Cheng said, I'm curious about something. Is there bad blood between you and Ren Xiaosu? Wang Kongyang scorned, that's none of your business. As the second-generation member of a consortium, aren't you ashamed to come here and mix with bandits? Zhong Cheng did not mind it. This valley has always been our Zone Consortium's territory. By rights, our Zone Consortium should be the ones controlling this area. But, Chief Wang, you're the one who's acting rather unusually. Why are you staking everything just so you can kill Ren Xiaosu when you've always been a cautious person? Surely he did not kill your wife and children or something, right? Wang Kongyang's mood instantly changed. He suddenly said, I've had a grudge against that Ren Xiaosu since we were at Stronghold 113. Am I wrong for attempting to kill him after he killed my brother? Zhong Cheng asked, then what do you know about Ren Xiaosu? I heard he's on very good terms with Zhang Jinglin ever since they were at Stronghold 113. Zhang Jinglin also intends for him to take over his role. Isn't that because he favors Ren Xiaosu and wants him to become the next commander of Stronghold 178? Aren't you afraid Stronghold 178 will get rid of you for trying to kill him? Wang Kongyang laughed and answered with a half-truth, where'd you get that info from? I was at Stronghold 113 back then. When Zhang Jinglin was teaching in the town's school, Ren Xiaosu was just his substitute teacher. If he's on good terms with Zhang Jinglin, would I dare to kill him? All of you were fooled by him. Wang Kongyang was harboring evil intentions. He was afraid Zhong Cheng did not dare to make a move on Ren Xiaosu because of the relationship between Ren Xiaosu and Zhang Jinglin. Wang Kongyang deliberated for a couple seconds and said, you might not know it, but I was the one who assigned the escorts for Zhang Jinglin when he traveled back to Stronghold 178 from Stronghold 113. But for someone as high-ranking as Zhang Jinglin, do you think he would make friends with normal people? Zhong Cheng frowned. Why did Wang Kongyang's words differ so much from the account Ren Xiaosu had portrayed? But as they had been dealing with Wang Kongyang for some time, they knew he was not a rash person. Since Wang Kongyang was willing to make trouble for Ren Xiaosu, could it really be that he might not be on such good terms with Zhang Jinglin after all? Zhong Cheng smiled and said, are you saying you want me to seek revenge for you? Why don't you join us and we'll seek revenge on your behalf together? Wang Kongyang smiled as he retreated. Once I left Stronghold 113, I said I'd never work for anyone else ever again. I'll only die for myself. That's such a pity, Zhong Cheng said with some regret. But you killed so many bandits under my Zone Consortium's flag. I'm afraid it won't be appropriate to just let you leave like this. You think you can stop me with just these people? Wang Kongyang laughed uproariously. That depends on whether you're capable of doing so or not. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Kongyang suddenly noticed the faces of the 30 soldiers behind Zhong Cheng were glowing with silvery strands. After that, all of them rushed at him. These soldiers were much faster than Wang Kongyang could imagine. He even felt like they were like 30 standard supernatural beings. Nano-soldiers. Wang Kongyang was bewildered. Although he had heard of nano-soldiers before, he had not seen them for himself. But Wang Kongyang could not understand something. Wasn't it only the Li Consortium and the Yang Consortium that had the nano-soldiers? Why would Zhong Cheng also have nano-soldiers among his subordinates? However, Wang Kongyang was already prepared. In just an instant, the rugged and menacing steam locomotive had already materialized into reality and driven off in the opposite direction with Wang Kongyang on it. A nano-soldier leaped up and caught a handle on the side of the steam locomotive. It seemed like he was trying to climb onto the train to kill Wang Kongyang. But to Zhong Cheng's surprise, Wang Kongyang just kicked the nano-soldier off. The power of this kick was so great it was far beyond Zhong Cheng's imagination. It was not a power that standard supernatural beings could achieve. This Wang Kongyang was the best of the best even among supernatural beings. When that nano-soldier was kicked down, his body blocked the other pursuing nano-soldiers to the rear. When they got up again to chase after him, they realized the steam locomotive had already sped off at a speed of 120 km per hour. Some bandits in the gullies in the distance suddenly crawled out and started shooting mercilessly at the steam locomotive. However, Wang Kongyang was already inside the train and the bandits could not hurt him. One of the bandits carrying an RPG launcher fired it at the train. But surprisingly, even when the RPG hit the steam locomotive, it only caused the strange train to wobble a little. Wang Kongyang suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood in the train. He wiped it off and growled, "Your Zone Consortium's people are like the hyenas that like attacking people from behind. I'll see how long you all can survive here in the northwest." Zhong Cheng watched calmly as the steam locomotive departed. He knew he had underestimated what Wang Kongyang could do. "The people who previously gave us the firearms and motorcycles." Jin Lan yelled, "I saw their convoy from the hillside. They're almost here. Let's go and take a look." Ren Xiaosu and Jin Lan headed east. Without needing to say anything, Yang Xiaojun started to choose a sniping spot in case the two parties got into a conflict. During this period, Ren Xiaosu had frequently been hearing from the bandits that there were people delivering food and weapons into the valley. However, he had not seen it for himself yet. Ren Xiaosu stood on a mound and looked at the approaching convoy. There was no logo on the bodies of the vehicles. He realized the convoy seemed to be very familiar with the valley, as they knew exactly where the locations of the gullies and rivers were. It seemed this group of people had been keeping themselves rather busy in the valley for the past few years. Before the convoy arrived, the people in the vehicles were waving from afar when they saw Ren Xiaosu and the others. They were acting in such a friendly manner that it seemed as though they had spotted their fellow villagers. However, the convoy did not approach them and stopped just under a lowest slope in the distance. 30 people jumped out of the vehicles and walked slowly towards them. The group looked to be moving free and easy, but they constantly maintained an attacking formation. The soldiers on both flanks were aiming their guns and already had their weapons cocked in case they needed to open fire at any time. Ren Xiaosu felt that the disposition of these soldiers was extremely familiar. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu thought the group's leader looked a little familiar, but he couldn't recall where he had seen him before. After these people slowly got closer, the leader smiled and said, "Hey, buddy, who's in charge here?" Ren Xiaosu chuckled and said, "I'm in charge here." "Who are you?" The leader said with a smile, "I'm here to deliver firearms and supplies to you all." The sincere look he portrayed was like he was from the consortium dropping by the strongholds factories to hand out rice to the workers there. Ren Xiaosu looked him over. "You're from the Qing consortium?" The leader raised an eyebrow and said, "Nope. Why do I find you so familiar looking?" Ren Xiaosu wondered, "Have we met before?" The leader smiled and said, "I also find you rather familiar. Perhaps it's fate that brought us together." During the conversation, the soldiers behind the person speaking started making some subtle movements as everyone placed their right index finger onto the trigger of their rifle. The atmosphere did not feel right. It was like they could get ambushed at any moment. Ren Xiaosu glanced at them and saw the atmosphere was getting more intense, so he decided to be direct and said, "I'm Ren Xiaosu." Off to the side, Jin Lan and the others were all confused. What was their boss doing? To their surprise, when the leader heard the name Ren Xiaosu, he suddenly froze. After that, he carefully sized up Ren Xiaosu and asked, "You're Ren Xiaosu?" Jin Lan and the others' jaws dropped. Was their boss this famous? It looked like the bandits themselves still did not understand their boss. Ren Xiaosu asked, "How do I prove it?" The leader gave it some thought and said, "What has Boss Luo given you before?" Ren Xiaosu hesitated for a moment before answering, "A banner, ha ha ha." The leader burst into laughter. "So it's really you? Hello, my name is Su Man." Su Man appeared to be very polite. Meanwhile, Jin Lan and the others were totally confused by the developments. What was this banner they were talking about? Jin Lan asked, "Boss, did you used to be a doctor?" As far as Jin Lan and the others knew, only doctors would receive banners these days. Ren Xiaosu looked at Jin Lan and the others and coughed. "Why all-ve also used the black medicine to treat your wounds?" It was Su Man who had discovered Ren Xiaosu's presence in the Jing Mountains back then. The two of them had clashed before. But it was late at night back then, and the two of them did not engage in close combat. Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu's face was really dirty at that time. So they did not recognize each other even though they were talking face to face. Su Man continued, "Back then, you were also in the Jing Mountains. But I probably did not see you because you did not enter the ruined city. I was tasked with capturing Su Xianchu that night." Ren Xiaosu immediately understood. Then Su Man said, "But you still look very familiar to me. Have we met before?" "Ha ha ha, I don't look familiar, I really don't." Ren Xiaosu laughed. "I got the wrong person earlier." Of course he couldn't fucking look familiar to Su Man otherwise, Qing Zhen, Luo Lan, and Su Xianchu might just find out what really happened that night. Su Man wondered, "But you really look familiar." "Wait, you're..." Ren Xiaosu began sweating. He quickly changed the subject and asked, "What are you doing here? Don't tell me the Qing Consortium is supplying all the guns into the valley." "Oh, this has been going on since some time ago. I only started coming here in the last year." Su Man said, "At that time, Mr. Qing Zhen had been placed under house arrest, and our men were separated when they got assigned out to the other combat troops. I received Mr. Qing Zhen's instructions and secretly came to the valley to take over the duties here." Ren Xiaosu suddenly realized it was Qing Zhen who had planned everything here, not the Qing Consortium. But if it happened several years ago, then he must have gotten all of the plans in the valley started while he was still under tight watch by the Qing Consortium's board of directors. He had planned really far ahead. The Yang Consortium, the Li Consortium, and the Zone Consortium were really unlucky to encounter such an opponent. Initially, the Zone Consortium wanted to take control of Stronghold 178 from within during the absence of Zhang Jinglan. In the end, Qing Zhen purposely sent Zhang Jinglan back to Stronghold 178. He wondered whether the Zone Consortium's people had seen red when they learned about that. Su Man suddenly said, "Boss Luo has specifically instructed us to inform you if we met you that we're ready to take action. Of course, even if you can't make it back in time, he'll still help you bring your brother and the others out." "Is Qing Zhen preparing to rescue Luo Lan?" Ren Xiaosu wondered, "Aren't you afraid that I'll betray y'all after you tell me this?" "Boss Luo said you can be trusted." Su Man said with a smile, "As subordinates, we just follow orders." Ren Xiaosu smacked his lips. The feeling of being trusted was quite nice. He asked Su Man, "Then what about all y'all? What are your plans? Are you going to attack the Zone Consortium?" Since Qing Zhen had prepared backup plans for the north, they would be put to good use when the time arrived, right? Su Man explained, "We've only managed to rope over some of the bandits in the north to our side, so it'll be impossible for us to defeat the Zone Consortium. Mr. Qing Zhen's plans here were not made so that he could send us to our deaths by taking on the Zone Consortium." Ren Xiaosu started to get curious. "Then what are y'all doing here?" Su Man hesitated for a moment before saying, "The peak of the upstream floods of the river will be here in about 10 days. At that time, we'll destroy all the bridges in the valley to stop the Zone Consortium from coming further south to aid the Yang Consortium. Meanwhile, we'll have our other men head south to destroy all the factories outside of the Yang Consortium's strongholds." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He felt that Qing Zhen's plans were somehow all linked to one another. It was like Qing Zhen had been planning to incorporate the entire northwest and southwest into the Qing Consortium's territory since several years ago. The series after series of Qing Zhen's plans involved both luck and calculation. From the start, Qing Zhen and Luolan had gotten their hands on the Li Consortium's breakthrough in nanotech, yet they gave it to the Yang Consortium through Yang Ziajin just like that. At that time, Qing Zhen asked Yang Ziajin, "Will the Yang Consortium put the knowledge to military use after acquiring what was originally a technology used for medical treatments?" Obviously, Qing Zhen already knew the answer. How could the Yang Consortium possibly not put the nanomachines to military use? These were greedy consortiums whose appetites would never be satisfied. The destruction of Stronghold 109 had a significant impact on the Li Consortium. As a result, several internal factions of the Li Consortium with their own interests were fighting one another to shirk responsibility for the defeat. At that time, the Li Consortium's higher UPS also needed a target to vent their anger on and prove they were not weaklings. If they let the matter slide, an even greater disaster might befall the entire organization. Therefore, they needed to take revenge. The Li Consortium's decision to start a war with the Yang Consortium was definitely not done out of spite. It was a decision they had to make after considering their political interests. The Li Consortium wanted to kill Li Shenton, but he had already disappeared. The Li Consortium also wanted to exterminate the experimentals. But at the time, the Yang Consortium had already amassed their troops along their shared border, so they couldn't worry about the experimentals. As such, the Li Consortium directed all of their anger at the Yang Consortium. In fact, the Qing Consortium joined the battlefield much later. It was originally a war between the Yang Consortium and the Li Consortium and had nothing to do with the Qing Consortium. Qing Zhen had predicted back then that the board would send him to the front lines, so he waited patiently in his villa. After he made his comeback, Qing Zhen immediately killed Qing Yun and chose to cooperate with the Yang Consortium. It looked like he had formed an alliance with the Yang Consortium, but he was actually holding their main forces at the front line of the battlefield in the south. This was probably one of the most critical portions of Qing Zhen's plan. Later on, Qing Zhen deliberately double-crossed the Yang Consortium with his sudden withdrawal of the troops. This led to Luolan's house arrest and caused the Yang Consortium to have to dispatch more troops to fill the gap at the front line. And currently, the mysterious force that was preparing to rescue Luolan, as well as the bandits he had been consolidating in the north, were all capable of troubling the defenseless Yang Consortium to the point they would not sleep well at night. It seemed Qing Zhen wasn't planning to swallow the Yang Consortium immediately. He had too much patience for that. Right now, he was only looking to disrupt the Yang Consortium's well-oiled supply chain. The collapse of the rear logistics might seem to be just an economic setback, but in war, it could mean that the front-line soldiers would not get issued with enough bullets to fight. It might not be felt too soon since the Yang Consortium's reserves could still last for a while. But over time, the Qing Consortium would probably be able to pin the Yang Consortium down on the ground and give them a good thrashing. If the Zone Consortium wanted to head south at this moment, they would be stopped by the arrival of the spring floods. Although the Zone Consortium could still build pontoon bridges, the intensity of the spring floods in the valley was absolutely not something that could be resolved by just constructing several dozen pontoon bridges. There were thousands of riverbeds, and the ground resembled broken porcelain scattered around in the middle of a river. Qing Zhen had even calculated the timing perfectly. It would take place 10 days later. But Ren Xiaosu could not understand who could possibly be capable of storming the stronghold to save Luolan. The Qing Consortium's main forces were at the front line in the south as well. Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked, "But there should also be the Zone Consortium's people who are part of the northern bandits, right? What if they try to stop you?" Su Man smiled and said, "They think our Qing consortium is trying to compete with them for the valley's territory, but they're too short-sighted by thinking that way. We've never regarded them as a threat before. We might be in the south for several days before they realize we're gone." The Zone Consortium had always thought the Qing Consortium was trying to seize the valley for themselves. But in reality, that was not the Qing Consortium's target. Ren Xiaosu took a deep breath. "I'll prepare to head south as well and cooperate with your people to save Luolan. The ones rescuing Luolan are not our people," Su Man said, "so you don't have to treat them as your friends." However, Su Man did not disclose too much information to Ren Xiaosu. That was all he could say. When they finished talking, Su Man was about to leave. Off to the side, Jin Lan suddenly said, "Since you're already here, why don't you give us some stuff before you leave?" "Oh!" Su Man was stunned. He had totally forgotten about giving out firearms and supplies to them. "What do you all need?" Ren Xiaosu could not be bothered to slowly choose, so he said, "Just leave all of it behind." Jin Lan and the others were shocked. Their boss was way too different. By saying it that way, how could the people be willing to give them anything? Su Man's mouth twitched. "Why don't you ask me to let you keep the resupply vehicles as well?" Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment. "Well, I guess that would work too. After unloading the supplies, you'll have 4 empty vehicles. Since there aren't that many of you, just leave these 4 vehicles behind for us." Off to the side, Su Jinyuan whispered, "Boss is really different. Usually, we have to wait for the consortium's people to come with the supplies and accept whatever they offer to us. Then we use the supplies to go and rob others. But, boss, he just robs them instead." Su Man frowned and considered it for a couple seconds before saying with a sigh, "All right, you're so pushy." Jin Lan and the others gasped. Who the hell was their boss, really? Never mind the Qing Consortium's people being so polite with them earlier, they even gave him whatever he wanted and the resupply vehicles as well. Ren Xiaosu stared at Jin Lan. "What are you still standing there for? Go and take the stuff." He turned to Su Man and said, "I won't keep y'all for lunch. I still have to hurry up and get ready." With that, Ren Xiaosu turned around and left, leaving Su Man standing there with his eyes twitching. After giving them all that stuff, he was actually chasing them away without offering them a meal? "We didn't even say we'd be staying for lunch, so who are you guarding against?" Ren Xiaosu found Yang Xiaojin and told her, "The Qing Consortium will likely launch an attack on Stronghold 88 soon. What's your opinion?" In fact, what worried Ren Xiaosu the most was how Yang Xiaojin was also a member of the Yang Consortium. If the Yang Consortium's stronghold came under attack, could she possibly stay out of it? Yang Xiaojin was silent for some time before replying, "I'll stay here." It seemed that the estrangement between Yang Xiaojin and the Yang Consortium was not as simple as their kinship fading. She had never mentioned her parents before. Based on her age, her parents should both be in their prime, so why were they not around? If Yang Xiaojin did not wish to talk about it, Ren Xiaosu would not ask her either. But he understood there had to be more to this. But even though Yang Xiaojin could ignore the Yang Consortium, she would not want to harm them. So she decided to stay out of it by remaining here in the settlement. After all, Ren Xiaosu would inevitably clash with the Yang Consortium if he cooperated with Luolan to get Yan Liuyuan and the others out when he went back this time. Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and said, "I'll be back as soon as possible. I'll wait for you here." In the fish basket made out of bamboo strips, 2 large river shrimps were wriggling, and 3 crabs had their pincers and legs tied up with hemp twine. Each crab looked like it weighed around 1 to 1.5 kilograms. If these crabs were caught in the times before the cataclysm, they would definitely be considered a good catch. "Little Loren, did you get a good look at what that shadow in the river was?" Li Shenton asked. Si Loren's sweet voice could be heard above him. "No, I didn't really see it." Li Shenton curled his lips. It was quite scary. Don't worry, it can't beat me, Loren comforted. I was just worried I would get eaten by it before you could save me. Li Shenton said with a smile, but luck is on my side today. Although I did not catch any fish, I caught quite a few shrimps and crabs. At this moment, the sound of an approaching vehicle came from further up the path. Li Shenton stood still with a calm expression on his face. When the vehicle appeared, the driver behind the wheel was shocked to see Li Shenton standing there. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! The driver frantically honked at him, but Li Shenton just stood there motionlessly like a rock. The driver stepped on the brakes, but the vehicle could not stop due to the muddy ground. The middle-aged man in the vehicle gritted his teeth as it headed straight for Li Shenton. He could not turn his steering wheel at this moment because the vehicle would flip if he did. Just as the off-road vehicle was about to hit Li Shenton, the little girl in the sky suddenly dropped down from above and smashed her tiny fist heavily on its hood. This punch caused the entire rear half of the off-road vehicle to fly into the air. Then it flipped over Li Shenton in midair before landing in the mud behind him. Li Shenton, the damsel is here to save you. Loren said happily. Li Shenton smiled but did not answer. Instead, he turned around and looked behind at the off-road vehicle that had just overturned. How sad! The driver was stuck in his seat and dangling in midair. He cursed from within the vehicle, "Are you fucking blind? You!" Before he could finish speaking, Loren floated over and flipped the vehicle back upright. Then she effortlessly lifted the old man in the back seat out. The old man had a look of horror on his face. Li Shenton said with a smile, "It's our first time meeting. Hi, my name is Li Shenton." When this name was mentioned, the old man became even more frightened. "How did you know I was going to be passing through here? What do you want?" Li Shenton said with a smile, "It seems you know nothing about my power, but there's no need to think about these meaningless things. What I'm curious about is, didn't the Qing consortium surround the stronghold a while ago? How did you manage to get past their perimeter?" The old man's face darkened. "What exactly do you want from me?" Li Shenton muttered to himself, "Oh, I see. You made a deal with that demon, Qing Zhen, so you can abandon the entire Li consortium and escape alone. Where does this road lead?" "There's a mountain road up ahead that goes all the way to the central plains. So you must be fleeing there." At this moment, Loren said, "Big brother Shenton, there's a lot of gold bars in the vehicle." Li Shenton nodded and said, "Before leaving, you even took all the gold from the Li consortium's bank. That's enough for you to lead a rich life in the central plains." The middle-aged man hiding in the vehicle did not dare to make a sound. The old man roared, "Li Yubai, kill him with the gun." But no matter how much the old man shouted at him, the middle-aged man did not dare to move recklessly. Li Shenton smiled and said, "You even thought of bringing your son with you to escape together, but sadly, he's useless. The Li consortium has fallen from grace so much in your generation." In the eyes of Li Shenton, the Li consortium was unworthy of its reputation. They were but a small warlord exercising sovereignty in a corner of the southwest. He said to the old man, "Dear patriarch of the Li clan, let me guess what deal you've made with that demon, Qing Zhen," because Loren was holding the old man up, his long, sparse hair was scattered messily on his forehead. His face turned red as he said, "How dare you claim others are demons when you're the demon yourself? I didn't say he was the only demon in this world." Li Shenton said with a smile, "I'm one as well. But let's get back to the point. Over a month ago, the Qing consortium suddenly withdrew their troops from the main battlefield, then the most mysterious nano-soldiers of the Li consortium disappeared shortly after that. The Li consortium's higher UPS must have thought you were preparing to put up a last stand against the enemy. However, they didn't realize these mysterious nano-soldiers were only your bargaining chip. So what was Qing Zhen's condition for you that he allowed you to leave with the gold? You betrayed the entire Li consortium this easily." The old man did not say anything more. As he was advanced in age, he started getting dizzy after struggling for a bit in Si Loren's hands. Li Shenton continued, at that time, the mysterious troops were disguised as wounded soldiers of the Qing consortium that retreated to the rear. They marched all the way north through the territories controlled by the Qing consortium with no one stopping them, and they were even provided with supplies and firearms too. As for their destination, even I'm not sure where they're headed. Can you tell me where they went and for what? This has nothing to do with you, the old man roared. I'm a member of the Li consortium as well. Li Shenton said with a sigh, I'd wanted to destroy the Li consortium with my own hands as I was really ashamed of this identity. After all, it wouldn't exactly be too gratifying if the Li consortium perished just like that. You're a madman. But it's not fun anymore. Li Shenton sighed before saying again, with the imminent destruction of the Li consortium, you should die alongside it as well. Si Loren said, should I kill them? No, I'll kill them myself. You're still young, so you shouldn't be killing anyone. Then Li Shenton raised his hand and grabbed a small stone from the ground without physically bending down. With a flick of his finger, the stone flew towards the old man and left a bleeding wound in his forehead. The small stone stopped at the back of the old man's head and suddenly changed direction to go through the back of the driver's head. Li Shenton muttered to himself, so this is how it all ends. Si Loren dropped the old man to the muddy ground as though he were a tattered bag. She wondered, what are we doing next? I don't know. Li Shenton said with a smile, we'll head to the Central Plains. I heard it's very prosperous. But we have to wait for a little while. Grandpa hasn't arrived yet. Okay. Si Loren nodded. When will Grandpa Hushuo be here? Tomorrow. Li Shenton suddenly remembered something and said, bring the gold in the vehicle along. Ren Xiaosu will definitely like it a lot. We can give it to him the next time we meet. Why don't we go look for him in the north? Si Loren asked curiously. Li Shenton said calmly, he probably doesn't want to see me now. We should head to the Central Plains and wait for him there instead. Okay, Si Loren answered obediently. She then flew into the woods and carried out a huge metal box that she placed over her back. The case was several times bigger than her, so it made her tiny body floating in the air look like a tiny bee. She stuffed the heavy gold pieces into the case, but it didn't look like it took her much effort to carry it on her back. Li Shenton stood on the quiet path and gazed at the far end of it. He saw sunlight shining down through the woods, and the scattered light looked just like the cold rain falling. He felt a little lost. Just like a child who had scored a 100% on his exam, he should be looking for his parents happily for reward and praise. But in this case, he couldn't find anyone he could share the happiness and success with. Mom, I've avenged you. It was late at night, so there wasn't really anyone around. Ren Xiaosu walked in the shadows of the streets as he quickly made his way to where Yan Liuyuan and the others were living. Su Xianchu was the one who taught him how to get into the stronghold that way, and it was surprisingly useful. He would get there soon. During this time, Ren Xiaosu did not encounter anyone on patrol. But just when he thought everything was going smoothly, he suddenly saw the familiar figure of a woman in front of him. That person also seemed surprised to see Ren Xiaosu here. Ren Xiaosu, didn't you go north for the elimination of the bandits? Zhou Yingxiu asked in surprise. But just as she finished speaking, she saw Ren Xiaosu charge out of the shadows and swing his palm towards her neck without saying a word. Zhou Yingxiu reacted extremely quickly as she raised her wrist to block the knife hand strike. But she was surprised that they were on completely different levels. Ren Xiaosu frowned as he looked at Zhou Yingxiu, who had fainted onto the ground. It should purely be a coincidence that he encountered Zhou Yingxiu here. But her reaction speed from earlier was not something the average person possessed. She was a supernatural being. After thinking for a moment, he picked Zhou Yingxiu off the ground and sprinted in the direction of Yan Liuyuan and the others. Ren Xiaosu did not know when Qing Zhen's people would make their move, so if he left Zhou Yingxiu here, who knew what trouble she could cause after coming around. However, Ren Xiaosu didn't feel that it was necessary to silence her. After Ren Xiaosu carried Zhou Yingxiu back, he jumped over the wall into the yard without knocking on the door. Upon landing on the other side, he saw Yan Liuyuan pointing a pistol at him. "Bro!" Yan Liuyuan said in surprise, "Why have you come back all of a sudden? You even brought someone back too." Liuyuan was supposed to be keeping watch tonight, but little did he expect such a surprise. Ren Xiaosu put Zhou Yingxiu down onto the ground and said with a smile, "Wake Li Qingzheng and the others up. Tie this Zhou Yingxiu up and gag her." "All right." Yan Liuyuan said. Ren Xiaosu asked, "Did anything happen at home recently?" Yan Liuyuan hesitated and said with a smile, "Don't worry, we've been doing well." All of a sudden, Luolan's head appeared over the wall from next door. "You're finally back. Any later and we wouldn't have made it in time." Ren Xiaosu said curiously, "Su Man told me it was supposed to take place 10 days later, and it's only been 3 days since then." Luolan replied, "This matter is a little beyond our control. We aren't sure when exactly they'll make their move, so it could happen at any moment." But just as he finished speaking, Ren Xiaosu heard a sudden explosion in the silence of the night. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "Beyond your control? Who exactly is coming to attack Stronghold 88? Aren't they your people?" "It's the Li Consortium's people. I don't have time to explain, so quickly pack everything up. My men will be here soon." Luolan anxiously shouted, "Let's hurry up and leave while the Yang Consortium deals with the attackers." "How many people from the Li Consortium are here?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "A regiment of 1,500 soldiers." Luolan said, "This is the last of the Li Consortium's forces." As they spoke, the southern part of the stronghold was set ablaze. Gunfire ripped through the peace of the night and loud explosions rang out. Ren Xiaosu wondered, how can 1,500 soldiers possibly take down a stronghold of the Yang Consortium? Luolan glanced at him. "They're 1,500 nano-soldiers." Just as Stronghold 88 started turning chaotic, the last stronghold of the Li Consortium at the front lines of the southern battlefield was declared destroyed. The Yang Consortium's leader at the front line, Yang Yuning, said to his trusted aide beside him, "Seize control of the Li Consortium's stronghold. After we get inside, we must quickly occupy the favorable terrain. Lay in ambush and kill all of the Qing Consortium's troops that enter the stronghold together. Don't show them any mercy." But before the Yang Consortium could rush into the stronghold, Yang Yuning suddenly heard an ear-piercing sound come from the sky. It was the sound of artillery fire penetrating through the air, and it was fired from the Qing Consortium's position. He instinctively roared, "Qingzhen, you treacherous scoundrel!" After the destruction of the Li Consortium, there would no longer be any basis for the Yang Consortium and the Qing Consortium's alliance. The Yang Consortium was planning to attack the Qing Consortium before this, but Yang Yuning did not expect the Qing Consortium to not even bother taking down the Li Consortium's stronghold before sneak attacking against them. The Yang Consortium was still not ruthless enough. "Go prone!" Yang Yuning roared. "Order the nano-soldiers to break through and take out Qing Yi." But just as he finished speaking, a soldier beside him pointed his gun at him and started shooting merciless. Before he could finish firing all the rounds in his magazine, the soldier collapsed in a pool of blood. However, the Yang Consortium's general, Yang Yuning, had already been shot to death. No one knew how long Qingzhen had been preparing for this day. All those countless days and nights that Qingzhen had spent playing those unnecessary moves had now dealt continuous fatal blows to his enemies in just a short few months. The reinforced company in charge of guarding the general immediately surrounded him. Amid the chaos, someone shouted they were being attacked. But the artillery fire in the sky was already arriving. Right from the beginning, the Qing Consortium dealt them a vicious blow. The Yang Consortium's troops were surrounded by smoke and mud after artillery shells hit their area. The artillery troops the Qing consortium had kept hidden for the longest time had fired at strategic locations like it didn't cost a thing. It was as though they wanted to bombard the entire battlefield once over. The Yang consortium's nano-soldiers on standby to attack Qing Yi's command center were immediately deployed. But just as they were about to charge diagonally to the front of the Yang consortium's position, they realized someone at the Qing consortium's position had suddenly removed the tarps on the armored vehicles. There was a dense matrix of gun barrels on those black armored vehicles. It was the metal storm, the mountain obliterator. The 1,000-odd nano-soldiers were blasted to shreds in an instant. Even before they died, they did not understand why these mountain obliterators appeared here. It wasn't mentioned in their intel at all. The intel they received was false. Qing Yi stood behind an armored vehicle and sneered, "Third bro was indeed right. These nano-soldiers are just a fancy bunch." The third brother Qing Yi was referring to was Qing Zhen. Qing Zhen was third oldest among their group of cousins. And according to Qing Zhen, these nano-machines that had always been hailed as the battlefield's divine weapons were really just bells and whistles in the face of modern artillery fire. When they annihilated the Divine Arms Battalion some time ago, Qing Zhen had said it was an extremely dumb tactic to use the nano-soldiers by putting them together. They should be used for infiltration, carrying out decapitation strikes, intelligence gathering, and destruction of key enemy installations. They shouldn't appear on the main battlefield at all. Unless, of course, the enemies were caught off guard. Just like in Stronghold 88, no one had imagined there would be an entire formation of nano-soldiers breaking through the Qing consortium's defensive line and arriving here. Even though the Yang consortium had tried their best to monitor the movements of all the Qing consortium's combat troops, they had neglected to keep tabs on the Li consortium, which was fighting a desperate last stand. But the whereabouts of all the Qing consortium's fighting forces were known to the Yang consortium's intelligence agency. It was impossible that they could have allowed the Qing consortium's heavy firepower troops to get so close to Stronghold 88. But ever since these nano-soldiers started moving north, they had relied on their high mobility to travel through the wilderness and never once showed themselves on the main roads. Although normal troops could not travel through such difficult terrain, it proved to be just walking on flat ground for these nano-soldiers. This was also the reason why Qing Zhen chose to have these nano-soldiers infiltrate the Yang consortium's stronghold. Even Qing Zhen's elite troops couldn't break through the Yang consortium's defensive line without raising a ruckus. But nano-soldiers could. At this moment, the flames were spreading towards the north. Ren Xiaosu realized it was moving in a straight line like a precise scalpel cutting into the Yang consortium's vital points. After destroying the gate and breaking into the stronghold, these nano-soldiers did not fight the garrison troops. Instead, they continued heading north as they sought to destroy the Yang consortium's manor and kill all of the Yang consortium's higher UPS located there. Although the Yang consortium's higher UPS were distributed across more than a dozen strongholds, 60% of them were located here in the Yang consortium's manor at Stronghold 88. If this place were destroyed, the Yang consortium would immediately fall into a state of disarray. Once the front line collapsed and the rear was without a leader, the Qing consortium would probably push forward unopposed and devour the already defeated Yang consortium bit by bit. Ugh! When Ren Xiaosu heard that sound, he turned around and saw Zhou Yingxiu slowly regaining consciousness. Zhou Yingxiu was staring blankly at the flames. She could also hear the thunder of firearms and explosives. Suddenly, she said in panic, "Let me go. My mother's still at home." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He hesitated for a second before walking over to Zhou Yingxiu and said, "I have nothing against you. I won't blame you for spying on me since you and I are looking at the matter from a different standpoint. But if I let you go here, don't cause any trouble for me, got it?" Zhou Yingxiu looked calmly at Ren Xiaosu. "Okay." Ren Xiaosu cut the hemp rope tied around Zhou Yingxiu. She jumped over the wall without hesitation and disappeared. Ren Xiaosu was no longer afraid the Yang consortium would come and stop them. After all, they could hardly even look after themselves. Suddenly, Tires screeched against ground in front of their door. Luolan roared, "Ren Xiaosu, hurry up and come with me. We have to leave this troublesome place. Those Li Consortium's nano-soldiers won't care if we're from the Yang Consortium or not once they start their killing spree." When Ren Xiaosu pushed open the front yard's door, he saw a lot of the stronghold's residents coming out onto the streets and watching the flames around them. Some people were hiding in the buildings, thinking it would be safer at home. 2 transport trucks were parked at the door and were surrounded by the Qing Consortium soldiers, who were standing guard. These soldiers had infiltrated Stronghold 88 earlier, but Luolan knew very well that they could not rescue him from here and were only responsible for aiding him. Ren Xiaosu helped Wang Fugui, Xiaoyu, and the others into the vehicles. Within 2 minutes, everyone was seated in the back of the truck in an orderly manner. Luolan roared, "Start driving! Go, go, go! I don't want to be buried along with Stronghold 88. Ren Xiaosu looked back at the blazing flames where the 1,500 nano-soldiers were. If he could just get his hands on some of the nano-machines, it would be enough for everyone here to get stronger. But he could not take the risk because he knew his priorities. If they turned around now, all of them could end up dying here instead. Ren Xiaosu would rather not get those nano-machines. The 2 trucks sped along the streets towards the east gate. When the stronghold residents saw the way those 2 trucks took flight, everyone started panicking as well and began fleeing in the same direction as the trucks. "Ren Xiaosu," Luolan called out in the back of the truck during the bumpy ride, "come with me to the Qing Consortium." Ren Xiaosu glanced at Yan Liuyuan, then shook his head. "No," puzzled, Luolan asked, "if you follow me to the Qing Consortium, you'll have meat to eat and wine to drink. There'll be plenty of money to spend, and you can get chauffeured around in luxury cars. Wouldn't it be such bliss to drive luxury cars and take beautiful women out for a spin?" Ren Xiaosu smiled. "I've thought about living in the stronghold before, but I have a better option now. I still feel that the wilderness is more suitable for me." Yan Liuyuan's eyes lit up. "Bro, where we going?" "Our new home." Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "A place where there's hope." Yan Liuyuan was taken aback. He replied, "Bro, thank you." "What are you thanking me for?" Ren Xiaosu said, "I really think that it's a good place." Luolan lamented, "Su Man already told me about this. I can only wish you all the best then. In the future, you can visit our Qing Consortium. Just mention my name wherever you go." "Okay." Ren Xiaosu nodded and said, "I will." Although they did not want to settle down in the Qing Consortium's territory, they could still visit. But that would definitely be a long time from now. The current Qing Consortium would probably be involved in the war for a long time to come. At this moment, the Qing Consortium was no longer a consortium but a war machine. "But the bridges in the north have probably been destroyed by now, so how are you guys going to head north?" Luolan asked. "Now there's a large river separating the north and the south, so you can't pass through that area." "Don't worry, I have a plan," Ren Xiaosu replied calmly. The bandit gangs controlled by the Qing Consortium in the north had come down to the south. They had destroyed not only the bridges but also all of the Yang Consortium's factories in the wilderness. If it were the past, he definitely couldn't have crossed the large river. But now he could. He really had Wang Kongyang to thank for presenting him with the steam locomotive. Ren Xiaosu had already tested it earlier. The steam locomotive could travel on any terrain like it was moving on flat ground. The tracks that materialized out of thin air allowed it to cross any rivers. When the 2 trucks arrived at the east gate, there were only a few garrison troops remaining. When the soldiers were about to inspect the vehicles, the Qing Consortium soldiers got out and killed them in an orderly fashion. How could these private troops guarding the gate be a match for the Qing Consortium's regular troops? After the Qing Consortium soldiers blew up the gate, the trucks burst through the enveloping smoke and drove out into the wilderness. This escape from a stronghold was much easier than all of their previous experiences. Ren Xiaosu turned cheerful the moment he finally managed to get Yan Liuyuan and the others out of the stronghold. Everything was developing positively, and Ren Xiaosu started looking forward to their future in the wilderness. But when he looked back at the sky filled with smoke at Stronghold 88, Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt this was probably not something he should be happy over. This era was starting to collapse. Could they really carve out a future of their own in the wilderness? When Ren Xiaosu first met Luolan at Stronghold 88, Luolan said Qing Zhen would definitely rescue him. Meanwhile, Qing Zhen had already made all the preparations for the rescue when he suddenly ordered the withdrawal of the Qing Consortium's combat troops and left the Yang Consortium's troops stranded at the front line. Even if Qing Zhen had not been able to turn the tables on the board in that chaotic struggle for power, this rescue mission would still have been carried out accordingly, with Qing Yi's assistance, and the nano-soldiers would still have arrived at Stronghold 88 within the planned time. On the day Qing Zhen trekked up to Mt Ginkgo, he had laid out everything for Luolan before the snowstorm arrived. Before they parted, Luolan was no longer trying to persuade Ren Xiaosu to go back to the Qing Consortium with them. He said to Ren Xiaosu, "Once you've all settled down in the valley, you can contact me. I'll get Su Man to send some supplies to you. Consider it my congratulations to you on your new home." "Sure." Ren Xiaosu did not be overly polite as they bade each other farewell. In this world, all good things had to come to an end. Ren Xiaosu and the others were about to head off towards that hope and light in their hearts. On their way back to the valley, Yan Liuyuan asked, "Bro, what's it like in the valley?" Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "It's a poor place where the homes are made out of mud. The land for growing crops has also been destroyed, and there's a gang of bandits so poor that they only have guns, while there's no one left for them to rob." Yan Liuyuan listened to this seriously but did not say anything. Ren Xiaosu asked, "So are you still willing to go there?" "Yes, of course." Yan Liuyuan's eyes gleamed as he said, "Is big sister Xiaojin there too?" Yeah, she's also there." Ren Xiaosu nodded and said, "Together with the bandits, the two of us usually dig for silt to make clay bricks to build houses with. We even give lessons to those bandits too." Yan Liuyuan asked, "Can I also build houses with y'all?" "Of course you can," Ren Xiaosu said. Yan Liuyuan was not afraid that life would be tough. As long as there were hope, he would still be very happy even if he had to carry bricks and build houses. Ren Xiaosu looked at Wang Yuqi, Zhang Wu, and the others behind him. Ms. Zhang had been very quiet ever since several of her female students left the group. No one knew what she was thinking about every day. Ren Xiaosu said to Yan Liuyuan, "Let's go. Bro will take you for a spin." "How are we going for a spin?" Yan Liuyuan wondered. "We don't even have a car. I thought we were going to walk to the valley." Stronghold 88 was more than 400 kilometers away from the valley, with two strongholds between them. It would even take Ren Xiaosu 3 days to run back there. However, Ren Xiaosu suddenly summoned the steam locomotive as though he had no intention of hiding this superpower. When Wang Fugui saw the train, he was stunned. "Xiaosu, this is a train." "That's right." Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "Let's go for a ride on the train." Everyone behind him started laughing. Other people would take beautiful women out for a spin in their luxury cars, but when it came to Ren Xiaosu, that became a train ride with a bunch of men, women, seniors, and teens. Why was everything that came out of Ren Xiaosu's mouth always a little different from imagination? "Come on, step onto the train," Ren Xiaosu shouted excitedly. With life full of hope now, he became particularly energetic and motivated in everything he did. The group sat inside the steam train as they watched the tracks in front of them change from illusion into reality. At the same time, the tracks behind them vanished segment by segment after the train passed by. This moment felt just like a dream. Xiaoyu asked, "Xiaosu, is this train your superpower?" To her memory, Ren Xiaosu had never revealed his superpowers before, and this was the first time he was showing it. What does this power of yours do? Ren Xiaosu thought carefully. I can use it to run some deliveries. When Stronghold 178 opens up the trade route in the future, I can go and pick up some goods to deliver. I wonder how much money I can make by delivering a trainload of goods. In reality, it was not about the money. Jie just wanted to put into service what he had learned. He wondered what Wang Kongyang would think if he found out about this idea of his. Wang Kongyang had probably not even thought about using his superpower to run a freight business. This was mainly because supernatural beings had a limit to their willpower. Even Wang Kongyang could only drive the train for half a day without carrying any load, and this was not even traveling at full speed. But it was different for Ren Xiaosu. From the moment he copied the steam locomotive power, he already had 12 more carriages than Wang Kongyang's version. Moreover, he did not even feel his mental strength being drained while using it. Actually, Ren Xiaosu had still not realized that his most advantageous skill was not in being able to copy other people's superpowers but that he had a mysterious mental strength that greatly surpassed that of other supernatural beings. It was extremely quick to travel using the steam locomotive without the constraint of doing so with one's own limbs. Currently, there were no consortiums in the northwest that had the power to stop supernatural beings. In fact, those consortiums were already busy up to the ears with their own matters. Meanwhile, the relationships between Ren Xiaosu and both the Qing Consortium and Stronghold 178 right now could also be considered as quite friendly, right? As the steam locomotive crossed the river en route to the valley, the natural moat that it provided was navigated over as though it were flat ground. All of the worries everyone had were instantly cast out of their minds. Ren Xiaosu reminded them, when we get to the settlement, don't mention this power of mine. Those bandits still can't be trusted. Wang Fugui and the others nodded in agreement. They still understood the seriousness of the situation. When they were about to arrive at the valley, Ren Xiaosu put away the steam locomotive and led everyone there on foot. When they finally arrived, the settlement was still in ruins. Yang Ziajin, who had her sleeves rolled up, was helping the refugees carry the harvested corn and sweet potatoes to store them in the trucks left behind by Su Man. Her face was very dirty, and it did not look like she was the heiress of a consortium. She looked like she was a refugee her whole life. When Yang Ziajin turned around and saw Ren Xiaosu and the others walking over, she waved happily to them. Yan Liuyuan did not seem saddened by the sight of the ruins at all. He waved at Yang Ziajin and shouted, "Sister-in-law." As this was the first time Yan Liuyuan had addressed Yang Ziajin as sister-in-law, she was stunned. Suddenly, Yan Liuyuan felt someone kick his butt. When he turned around, he saw Ren Xiaosu blushing furiously. "Stop messing around." Meanwhile, Yang Ziajin had a calm expression on her face. This was mainly because the bandits had already been addressing her as Boss Lady 1 for the past few days, so she was used to it and was willing to be addressed this way. Xiaohu came over to Yang Ziajin and took out a handkerchief to wipe her face. She smiled and said, "What a terrible shame for a nice girl like you. It's akin to planting a beautiful flower in cow dung." Ren Xiaosu said unhappily, "Hey, watch your words. Who are you saying is cow dung?" Xiaohu ignored him. Instead, she took out a gold bracelet and put it on for Yang Ziajin. "Big sis doesn't have much money, and this bracelet is not heavy enough either, so please don't mind it. When Big sis has more money, I'll buy another more expensive one for you." Yang Ziajin did not decline it. Rather, she smiled gleefully and said, "Of course. I don't mind, I like it a lot. One boss lady and sister-in-law mean the same thing here." When everyone went back to work, Xiaohu secretly asked Ren Xiaosu, "Did you use the tent that Big Sis prepared for you?" The first thing that Xiaohu thought about the moment they arrived here was this. When she saw that there was not even a proper place for them to live, she knew the tent would definitely come in handy. But as Xiaohu joyfully waited for his reply, Ren Xiaosu stammered, "She sleeps inside the tent while I sleep outside." Xiaohu pinched Ren Xiaosu hard. How could you let such a good opportunity slip? He had wasted all her efforts. Everything she'd done had been for nothing. To avoid further questioning, Ren Xiaosu quickly went over to the refugees and gathered everyone together. I believe everyone already knows that the Zone Consortium in the north probably knows that we're here. Now that the south is in chaos, we might be in danger if we continue living here. At this moment, Jin Lan took the lead and shouted, "Boss, we'll follow you wherever you go." Ren Xiaosu paused for half a minute before suddenly saying, "Actually, I'm not from Stronghold 178. He felt that a wonderful hope should not be mixed with deception. If that dream were really worth it, there should be no impurities. So he had to be honest with them. After the bandits gradually quieted down, Ren Xiaosu continued, "I know both Su Xianchuo and Zhang Jinglin, and we even have a good relationship, but I'm not actually from Stronghold 178. If any of you wish to leave, I can write you a recommendation letter. As for whether you'll be allowed to join Stronghold 178, I can't guarantee that." Ren Xiaosu waited for everyone to make their decision. He was not pinning much hope on most of them choosing to remain with him. He had spoken the truth as he did not wish to deceive this group of people anymore. Sure enough, most of the bandits started looking at one another after hearing what Ren Xiaosu said. Regardless of whether the method that Ren Xiaosu had previously used to fool them was effective or not, even though everyone enjoyed the process of earning the bullets, they only chose to stay around because they ultimately were looking to join Stronghold 178. So the moment the truth was revealed, everyone instinctively hesitated. Someone stepped forward and said, "Boss, to be honest, I only chose to stay behind because I really wanted to go to Stronghold 178. So, Ren Xiaosu nodded. He beckoned for Yan Liuyuan to get pen and paper, then wrote a letter to Su Xianchuo and Zhang Jinglin on the spot. However, he could not guarantee that Stronghold 178 would take them in as a favor to him. Once someone got the ball rolling, the next bandit stepped forward and asked for a recommendation letter as well. Even though they were very happy here, their future was much more important. It was Stronghold 178 they were talking about. Within half an hour, roughly 1/3 of the 300-odd bandits had left. Ren Xiaosu was not unhappy. Rather, he appeared unusually calm. There was no point in forcing them to stay if they wanted to leave. He was no longer willing to resort to lies in order to keep these people around. Ren Xiaosu looked at Jin Lan. "Why aren't you going?" Jin Lan replied with a smile, "I already guessed that was the case." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "You guessed it?" "Boss, I'm not stupid." Jin Lan said with a smile, "If Stronghold 178 really wanted to unify the valley, they wouldn't have to act so cautiously and only send 2 people here. With just a word from them, 99% of the bandits in the valley would take up the offer immediately." "Then you," Ren Xiaosu was startled. He wanted to ask Jin Lan and the others why they did not leave if that were the case. Jin Lan said with a smile, "I'm in that 1%. When you and Boss Lady jumped into the muddy river and dug for silt together with us, I decided that I would follow you and explore the opportunities in the valley. Even if it wasn't the valley, we'd still have followed you wherever." After Jin Lan spoke up, Zhang Yihan added, "There's nothing great about Stronghold 178 anyway. It gets so fucking cold there in the winter that we wouldn't even know who we are, so it's no loss even if we don't go there." Su Jinyuan said, "Bandits don't meet with a good end. We've come across all kinds of bandit leaders before, but this is the first time I've encountered a leader like you. It doesn't matter if we can't go to Stronghold 178. We'll just go wherever you say, boss." Ren Xiaosu was speechless. Meanwhile, Yan Liuyuan, Yang Xiaojun, and the others were watching quietly from the side. Perhaps this was the reason why Ren Xiaosu liked it out here. They had been wandering through the vast wastelands for about a year now. It seemed like they had just been going from stronghold to stronghold, one after another, yet they never managed to find one they could truly call home. And now, it seemed like Ren Xiaosu had found it. Yan Liuyuan whispered, "Sister-in-law, I like this place." Yang Xiaojun smiled and patted his head. "Me too." Ren Xiaosu took a deep breath and said, "Then let's head northwest. I purposely checked the records in the library and know that there's a Mt. Kushui located in the northwest. Apparently, there's a valley in that mountain where it's spring all year round. The clear stream that passes through the valley does not freeze even in winter." The group of bandits looked at each other and started laughing. "Then let's head to Mt. Kushui. We've also heard of that place before, and some of us thought about going there too. But it seems that an extremely fierce group of wild boars led by a king is active in that area, so no one's dared to go there." Ren Xiaosu shouted, "Everyone, get on your motorcycles and take all your luggage. We're setting off. We can ride the motorcycles right now." Su Jinyuan's eyes lit up. "What else would we do with these hundreds of bikes?" Ren Xiaosu was incredulous. "You gonna push them or leave them right here?" Jin Lan mumbled, "Then do we still need to earn bullets to trade them in after we get to Mt. Kushui?" Ren Xiaosu answered seriously, "Of course you have to." Jin Lan was speechless. The journey to Mt. Kushui in the north required them to go around the front lines at Mt. Daban, Mt. Tangwang, and Mt. Guan first, traveling about a 100 kilometers west to Mount Kalei. After that, they would turn and continue heading north. It was not that Ren Xiaosu was deliberately trying to take a detour, but that he wanted to avoid all the bandits' camps in case someone discovered their movements. Now that the south was plunged into a state of chaos, the Zone Consortium had become an uncontrollable hyena in the wilderness. The Zone Consortium had become the most dangerous presence of all. For this journey, each bandit gave 1 or 2 passengers a ride on their motorcycles. The female refugee riding pillion on Su Jinyuan's bike was so happy she could die. Su Jinyuan had always been a little reserved towards her. But it was all good now. He was finally not shy about it anymore. Jin Lan and the others even started teasing Su Jinyuan. After they got to Mt. Kushui and finished building their houses there, they would hold a wedding for these two. But on the third day of their journey, Ren Xiaosu was taken aback when they were close to arriving at Mt. Kalei. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" Someone asked, "Boss, what's the matter?" Ren Xiaosu frowned as he looked at their surroundings. He was looking for something. Ren Xiaosu whispered to Yang Xiaojun, "Quick! Search for a vantage point. The rest of you, find a place to hide. We're under attack." Jin Lan reacted and hurriedly gestured to the bandits. "Prepare for battle." No one knew where the enemy was, nor even what was going on. But if Ren Xiaosu said so, it definitely meant that danger was approaching. Zhong Cheng had performed a card trick for Ren Xiaosu after they left Stronghold 88 to head into the valley. At that time, Ren Xiaosu deliberately asked Zhong Cheng if he could conjure up 4 fours for him. When he drew the cards and covered them in his hands, he switched them out and replaced the 4 cards with his explosive poker cards. When the two of them parted ways, his mental connection to the explosive poker cards snapped due to the distance between them. It seemed his control over the explosive poker cards was also limited to a distance of around 1 to 2 kilometers. As for the specific range, Ren Xiaosu was not exactly sure. The reason why he was nervous now was because his connection to those 4 cards had returned. Zhong Cheng was here. This was something Ren Xiaosu was most careful about, so there couldn't possibly be any mistakes. He had even caught the spy who had infiltrated the group in order to keep their whereabouts a secret. He also decided they would have to leave the settlement they had grown familiar with. But despite all his efforts, their whereabouts had still been exposed. Zhong Cheng's previous route should have taken him in the northeastern direction, so based on that logic, he should absolutely not be appearing here in the west, especially not in the vicinity of Mt. Kalei. Ren Xiaosu knew there could have been more than one spy hidden amid them. Moreover, the spy was so good they did not get discovered even after being put through so many observations and tests. That person could even be a former soldier of the Zone Consortium. A second later, he heard a rumbling getting closer. It sounded like a large number of people were approaching the dune in front of them. Right after, a muffled explosion rang out. Ren Xiaosu stood in place and asked, "Did y'all hear something?" It sounded like something had exploded within a hard metal container before dragging its tail across the air. It then traveled in a crazy parabolic trajectory across the sky and headed towards Ren Xiaosu and the others. Yang Xiaojun, who was still searching for a vantage point, suddenly turned to Ren Xiaosu and shouted, "Ren Xiaosu, it's a mortar!" With a loud boom, Ren Xiaosu stared blankly at the mortar shell that landed at Su Jinyuan's feet. Then he was blown into the air. A large amount of mud and debris was blown off the ground. That female refugee who was in love with Su Jinyuan ran in tears to the spot where he fell. She hugged his head and cried out to him, but the man she loved no longer responded to her. There weren't any farewells. In a war, there would hardly ever be any chance to say goodbye. In fact, Su Jinyuan was planning to marry her after they arrived at Mt. Kushui, but he just didn't know how to say it to her. In the middle of the night, he would lie down in the wilderness with his arm cushioning his head and ask Jin Lan, "I'm just a bandit. Do you think I'll be a burden to her by marrying her?" At the time, Jin Lan and the others laughed and teased Su Jinyuan for having romantic thoughts. But at this moment, Jin Lan and the others were stunned by the sight of their comrade falling. "Jinyuan!" Ren Xiaosu yelled, "Don't just stand there. Find cover!" A fit of extreme rage blasted within him. That glimmer of hope that was just starting to bloom in his soul had been utterly wrecked by a mortar shell. Ren Xiaosu had gotten a glimpse of that hope and their future, but the more beautiful those moments were, the more hopelessness and anger he felt now. He had seen that hope before. The enemy was prepared for the attack as they fired off more than one mortar round towards them. They were going all out to ensure that everyone here would die. Yan Liuyuan immediately activated his nanomachines and retreated with Xiaoyu. The others also quickly looked for concealed spots on the ground to take cover from the shelling in an effort to reduce their casualties. The mortar shells landed beside them one after another. Within a minute, dozens of bandits were either killed or wounded. Ren Xiaosu conjured up the steam locomotive out of nothing behind him and yelled, "Everyone, hide in the train!" But at this moment, another mortar shell landed, directly on the steam locomotive. Ren Xiaosu spat out a mouthful of blood. So it turned out that he would receive backlash whenever the train took damage. But Ren Xiaosu did not even bother wiping off the blood on his mouth. "Motherfucker!" Ren Xiaosu mumbled, "Motherfucker! Motherfucking hell!" Ren Xiaosu suddenly charged in a frenzy towards where the mortars were fired from. He went past layer upon layer of smoke in the wilderness like an angry lion with a bloody spear stabbed in its body. It only took 20 seconds for Ren Xiaosu to cover that short distance of a few hundred meters and come into view of the enemy's defensive line. As it turned out, they were the Zone Consortium's combat troops. And there were over 1,000 of them. Should he go over? If he did, he might not be able to make it out. But if he did not, the mortars would kill everyone behind him. Ren Xiaosu started charging again at the defensive line of over 1,000 people. His lone figure on the desolate wasteland made him resemble a solitary boat in front of a towering tsunami. At the same time, it also made him look like the most brilliant star in the sky. Ren Xiaosu roared, "Zong Cheng, don't you want to kill me? I'm right here. Where are you?" His voice reverberated like a large bell being struck. Ren Xiaosu subconsciously detonated the explosive poker cards, and 2 seconds later, a fireball suddenly shot up in the air at the rear of the defensive line. That was the gift from Ren Xiaosu to Zong Cheng, but he hated himself a little at this moment as he thought, why didn't I finish off this hyena from the north when I had the chance? Self-blame, remorse, and anger formed into a killing intent within him. But after the explosive poker cards exploded, there were still no signs of chaos within the Zone Consortium's defensive line. This told Ren Xiaosu that something was wrong. It was not the normal way a fighting force would react when its commander fell. Zhong Cheng was probably not dead yet. How could Zhong Cheng still be alive? Ren Xiaosu immediately summoned his shadow clone and instantly covered his entire body with the nano armor. The two figures abruptly changed their direction on the battlefield and dashed towards where the explosive poker cards had just gone off. Without seeing for himself that Zhong Cheng had really died, Ren Xiaosu would never be able to accept it. A moment later, the shadow clone rushed in against the intense gunfire ahead of Ren Xiaosu and charged straight into the battlefield where over 1,000 soldiers were holding the line. The fearsome shadow clone forced a bloody path through the crowd for Ren Xiaosu to follow. Amid the chaos, Ren Xiaosu held his black saber in one hand while using the other to constantly throw the grenades he had stored after pulling out the pins on them. After he ran out of grenades to throw, he started throwing the explosive poker cards next. The gratitude tokens he had originally accumulated to around 900 were decreasing rapidly, but he showed no signs of hesitation. No one was expecting Ren Xiaosu to barge into the defensive line alone, and they didn't expect him to remain unharmed up till now either. Ren Xiaosu started killing his way through the ranks while the surrounding Zone Consortium soldiers shot indiscriminately at him. However, they discovered that the armored monster and Black Shadow did not seem like they were affected by the attacks at all. Someone attempted to aim an RPG at Ren Xiaosu, but Ren Xiaosu deliberately chose to attack where most people were congregated. If the RPG landed there, it would definitely injure many of their own troops. Ren Xiaosu had single-handedly turned the entire Zone Consortium's defenses upside down. When Ren Xiaosu looked at his surroundings, the image of Su Jinyuan's smiling face suddenly appeared in his mind. Then the faces of those around him turned into demonic shadows. But that did not matter as dawn was already here. The gods were about to rise. In this brand new age of the rise of gods, superhumans were defined as those who could single-handedly go against a group of people as gods. If this definition held true, Ren Xiaosu was slowly approaching that definition regardless of how he managed to achieve it. Although, he was still a far ways away from achieving that. The armor on Ren Xiaosu was riddled with holes as the power for it came close to depletion. He rushed to the spot where the explosive poker cards had blown up, but to his surprise, Zhong Cheng's corpse wasn't there. Ren Xiaosu roared, "Come and kill me!" Zhong Cheng was also unsure if there were any problems with those playing cards. He was only being careful not to fall into a trap, and was trying to prevent any supernatural beings from plotting against him in these strange times. As it turned out, Ren Xiaosu really came looking for him. Ren Xiaosu stood in the middle of the battlefield with soldiers surrounding him in heavy numbers. He had to come over, because if he did not, the artillery fire would continue bombarding the bandits and refugees until they were all dead. And by now, the mortar bombardment had stopped. The batteries of the nanomachines in Ren Xiaosu were still depleting, and some of them had crumbled off like dust due to being out of power. It was as though this unique life form were withering away one by one. The shadow clone continuously circled Ren Xiaosu as it slaughtered the enemies with its black saber in hand, cutting them down like a whetstone. But Ren Xiaosu just stood there silently. He suddenly felt like he could understand Qing Zhen a little better. The humans in these wastelands sought power and ambition like ugly moths attracted to candlelight and warmth. Humans had been endlessly seeking power over the strongholds, resulting in them becoming selfish and greedy. If I do not kill you, you will end up killing me. As such, the basic rule of the world was to fight to the bitter end. That was because even when the world came to an end, hope still did not exist. As Ren Xiaosu looked around, his tough armored figure was slowly being disintegrated into a fine dust. This was a trap that had been prepared for a long time. His opponent was cunning like a hyena and was about to kill him right here. Since you wanted me to come over, and now that I'm here, why are you not showing yourself? Ren Xiaosu roared again, "Come and kill me!" The Zone Consortium soldiers were looking at the armored young man in the crowd like he was a star in a mysterious nebula of the universe. Scorching, dazzling, and lonely. However, they also felt that this was probably Ren Xiaosu's final moment of brilliance. After that, this dazzling star would become just like the afterglow of the sunset. Sinking into the sea. A hail of bullets rained down on Ren Xiaosu and the shadow clone. Heavily surrounded, this lonely island would get swallowed up by the tsunami, and the clown would mock him in delight from the waves. A god was about to die. But at this moment, Ren Xiaosu looked back at where he had arrived from. The Zone Consortium soldiers were taken aback. Why was he looking behind him? Someone followed Ren Xiaosu's gaze and looked over. Suddenly, a steam locomotive resembling a long dragon rushed out of a grey mist and smashed through the formation that had surrounded Ren Xiaosu. At the same time, the steam locomotive shattered the endless despair. "Shit, he's trying to escape," someone exclaimed. "Kill him! Use the RPGs!" The soldiers wanted to use their weapons to stop the steam locomotive, but not even a direct hit from the RPG could cause any damage to the train. The steam locomotive sped through the air and threw the entire defensive line into complete chaos. No one had expected such a reversal. They all thought the armored young man who had been surrounded was surely going to die. Ren Xiaosu said calmly, "I'm here, so why don't you come out and kill me? Why don't you show yourself and kill me? You better watch out when I come and kill you." Then the seemingly ancient train drove out into the real world. The sound of the wheels turning and the metallic clanging of the tracks paving themselves was enough to terrify anyone. The rail car's smokestack suddenly spewed a cloud of thick black smoke, and the long whistle that followed was like a bugle being blown. On the battlefield, the black iron steam locomotive was driving straight in and headed for Ren Xiaosu, who was standing there silently. The Zone Consortium soldiers felt a strong sense of powerlessness, as though no matter how hard they struggled, they would still have to face their fate. As the steam locomotive drove past Ren Xiaosu, he grabbed onto Yang Xiaojin, who had stretched out her hand from the inside. He was then carried forward by the train as it sped off into the distance towards the wilderness. However, Ren Xiaosu felt his heart ache. That wilderness had represented his hope and light. The soldiers at the rear concentrated their firepower on the departing train, but their firearms seemed to have no effect on the steam locomotive. As the train drove north, Ren Xiaosu spat out another mouthful of blood after he was brought into the train through the window. Right after, the nanomachines that were still covering him also started falling off. Ren Xiaosu slumped into a seat in the carriage and wheezed as he leaned against the wall. Even though the nano-armor took the damage from those vicious bullets, he still sustained internal injuries. Moreover, the damage to the steam locomotive and shadow clone would be directly transferred back to him. It was a pain that normal people would never experience in their lives and was so extreme that he felt as though he were in the abyss of hell. At this moment, he just wanted to sit still like this until the world ended. More than half of the nanomachines had died in this battle and could not return to Ren Xiaosu's body. Even he couldn't take on an entire regiment of people armed with firearms and explosives. Or rather, he could handle them for only a short period and only if he were assisted externally by something like the nanomachines. With the loss of more than half of his nanomachines, the armor could no longer cover his entire body. If he got shot, it would be very dangerous for him. Wang Yuji and several of the other male students came up to Ren Xiaosu and held out their hands. "You SARS." Ren Xiaosu glanced at them before shaking his head and saying, "Y'all don't have much of them in your bodies." Yan Liuyuan firmly said, "There's mine too." Ren Xiaosu calmly rejected him, "Keep them to protect yourself." Yang Xiaojin crouched down to help him wipe away his sweat and blood. "I wasn't of any help." Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "How many of our brothers are dead or injured?" Jin Lan said tearfully, "More than 60 of them have died. We wanted to bring the female refugee with us, but she committed suicide with Su Jinyuan's gun." Ren Xiaosu paused for 30 seconds before changing the subject. "Who's familiar with the terrain around here?" We can't head to Mt. Kushui anymore. There's a spy among us. Everyone looked at one another. A spy? So it was because there was a spy who had revealed their whereabouts that caused them to get ambushed? Jin Lan shouted at the group, "Who is the spy? Step forward." Ren Xiaosu sneered, "Search everyone. This spy must have some kind of communication equipment to contact the Zone Consortium." Just as he finished speaking, a bandit suddenly panicked and jumped out of the window to try to escape from the steam locomotive. But while he was still in midair, Yang Xiaojin took out her pistol and shot him straight in his temple. Ren Xiaosu said coldly, "Keep searching, there might be others." But this time, they could not find any more clues of who could be a spy. But Ren Xiaosu still found it hard to put his mind at ease. Even though they did not find any communication equipment, it did not mean that there were no more spies. The spies seemed to have left a mark on Ren Xiaosu that made it difficult for him to trust others again. It was a mark caused by the deaths of Su Jinyuan and the others. They seemed to be safe for the time being. But Ren Xiaosu's failure to kill Zhong Cheng was weighing on him. His opponent was a fierce, cunning, and cruel hyena, and the feeling of disgust was overwhelming Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu immediately paled when the landmines loaded with TNT exploded one after another in the wilderness, bombarding the steam locomotive as it went past them. Even the train started turning a little more translucent, as though it would disappear at any moment. Each time the steam locomotive set off a landmine, Ren Xiaosu felt like his vitals were being torn apart. Everyone saw Ren Xiaosu suddenly curl up on the ground in pain. It was so painful that large beads of sweat started rolling down his forehead. But then, everyone realized there were 2 gunshot wounds on Ren Xiaosu's side. As it turned out, Ren Xiaosu's nanomachines were no longer fully protecting him while he was escaping earlier. However, Ren Xiaosu was forced to remain composed and not treat his wounds immediately since he had to deal with the spy first. Everyone watched Ren Xiaosu put his right index finger and middle finger into his wound. Then, he forcefully plucked out the first bullet before doing the same for the second bullet. Jin Lan and the others looked on in a daze. They had never met anyone so brave as to extract bullets out of their own wounds. Ren Xiaosu had his eyes closed, and every last strand of hair on his body looked to be trembling. Only then did Yan Liuyuan finally react. He quickly took out the black medicine Ren Xiaosu had given to him and applied it onto his wound. But even though the wounds had been treated, the pain of the backlash from the attacks on the steam locomotive did not lessen. Ren Xiaosu was trembling as Yang Xiaojin hugged him tightly in her arms. She said, "Put away the steam locomotive and let everyone walk on foot." But Ren Xiaosu roared angrily as though he did not hear it. The steam locomotive that had started turning a little translucent solidified once more. Yang Xiaojin whispered, "You've already done enough. Ren Xiaosu, I won't have any regrets if we die together today." Ren Xiaosu wanted to give up as well, but he had to hold on. If the steam locomotive were to disappear at this moment, everyone would fall into the minefield. If that happened, all of them would die. Jin Lan probably understood what Ren Xiaosu was doing. He said in a daze, "Boss, just give up. Let's die together." Ren Xiaosu continued to keep his eyes closed and did not respond, but the steam locomotive solidified once more. It wasn't until the train drove for a further 3 kilometers before they finally got out of the wilderness zone that was filled with land mines. Ren Xiaosu could take it no more. The steam locomotive started to rapidly slow, but it suddenly disappeared before it could fully stop, forcing everyone to roll to the ground. Jin Lan heard motorcycle engines in the distance. It sounded like a large number of bandits were heading for them. "What should we do?" Zhang Yihan asked with a frown. He could already see over 1,000 bandits in front of him. It was impossible for Ren Xiaosu to participate in such high-intensity battles. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu looked extremely pale, so it was difficult to say if he still had any strength left to put up a fight or not. The pain was like millions of ants biting into every nerve of Ren Xiaosu. It was so painful it could make him lose his mobility. Ren Xiaosu clenched his teeth with his eyes closed without saying a word. They were at a dead end. Everyone could only watch in silence. No one could bear the burden for Ren Xiaosu. Some people in the group suddenly started fleeing northwest without saying anything. They stopped caring as they treasured their lives more. Everyone was fine with not going to Stronghold 178 and happily continuing to earn their bullets at a new settlement. But if they died here? There would be nothing left if they died here. Ren Xiaosu had already planted a seed of faith in their minds. Given time, the seed might even have grown into a towering tree someday. But there was no time anymore. Just as Ren Xiaosu had understood it, there was no hope when the world came to an end. Yan Liuyuan quietly watched as hundreds of people started leaving their companions behind. He said to Ren Xiaosu, "Bro, I'll stay with you." Ren Xiaosu's trembling gradually lessened. It seemed that with the disappearance of the steam locomotive, the pain from the backlash had also rapidly dissipated. Jin Lan slowly got up from the ground and dusted himself off. He unslung the automatic rifle from his back, disengaged the safety, and cocked the weapon. Then he smiled at Zhang Yihan and said, "At worst, I'll go down to the underworld to meet up with Su Jinyuan. Those of you remaining from the first squad, follow me and don't disgrace boss." The sound of guns being cocked rang out. Adrenaline suddenly rushed through the veins, bones, muscles, and hair of Jin Lan and the others. Jin Lan laughed and said, "Boss, get some rest for now. We'll go down first and wait there for you." Tui, 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 that sounds a little ominous. I felt really happy during this period. In this chaotic world, it's good enough to have felt happy just once. 2ND squad, take the others and get out of here. Saying that, Jin Lan suddenly rushed towards the oncoming bandits. In the sunlight, Jin Lan's back seemed to be glowing. "Stop acting like a hero." Zhang Yihan wiped away his tears and yelled, "Protect boss, let's head west." Yang Xiaojun glanced at Yan Liuyuan. "Carry him on your back." Yan Liuyuan was taken aback. "Sister-in-law, where are you going?" But before he was done talking to her, Yang Xiaojun had already turned around and walked off into the wilderness. She wanted to create a last line of defense for Ren Xiaosu there. "Don't you die." At this moment, Jin Lan's group, who was standing behind the others, had found an ambush location behind a hill. They crouched on one knee to stabilize the gun with the method Yang Xiaojun had taught them. Laughing, Jin Lan shouted, "Believe it or not, but I must have been a sniper in my previous life." Someone laughed heartily and said, "No, you're not, I am." "Haha, come on, we were definitely all snipers in our previous lives." Then Jin Lan saw the enemy bandits finally entering their range. He shouted until the veins on his neck were protruding, "Open fire!" When the gunfire rang out, a large group of bandits right at the front of the motorcade suddenly fell to the ground. But too many bandits had come this time. Previously, Qing Zhen's men were holding them back in the north. But with his men deployed to the south, no one in the valley could keep these northern bandits in check anymore. Jin Lan's group had not undergone any formal military training before. They just imitated whatever firearms knowledge Yang Xiaojun had taught them and carried out the basics, like burst firing. But they did not really manage to stop the bandits from advancing south even after they had finished firing all the rounds in their magazines. Seeing that the motorcade was almost right in front of them now, Jin Lan's group couldn't reload amid their panic. Suddenly, he threw aside his gun in desperation and blocked the motorcycles in front of him with his body. "Motherfuckers, you're not allowed to pass through me." In that instant, Jin Lan turned his body into a barricade. One of the enemy bandits riding at the front of the motorcade made an emergency turn when he saw someone rush out from behind the hill. But Jin Lan was reluctant to let the enemy speed past him, so he jumped at the motorcycle. With this hijack, he actually pulled down the bandit from the motorcycle. Meanwhile, the fallen bike ended up blocking the path of the other bandits behind the rider. The bandits further back got up and started shooting mercilessly, killing Jin Lan and that fallen bandit together. Jin Lan smiled as he closed his eyes. Motherfucker. This was a chaotic world where the living had no choice, and the dead were forgotten. Since the day they were born, there had been nothing to be happy about for them. All they received was suffering. But on one day, someone suddenly appeared and let them see the light and learn what hope was. Because of that, they knew they had to let this person carry on living. This person might very well be that ray of light. Light. Zhong Cheng was not exactly anxious. He exuded a calm and composed aura. We spent so much time planning this. If we fail, that would be really disheartening. But even if you could control Yang Ziajin, I'm afraid it wouldn't affect the Yang Consortium much. Someone beside him asked, can you make her live like a normal person in the Yang Consortium? Yes. Zhong Cheng glanced at him. However, the voice didn't come from Zhong Cheng's mouth. He saw a nano-soldier walk out from behind Zhong Cheng with a smile and say, Han Yang, you don't understand. The Yang Consortium will be helpless now that they're facing Qingzhen, so I'm not too interested in the Yang Consortium anymore. Zhong Cheng said calmly, what I'm targeting is the power of the organization behind her. The saboteurs are currently controlled by her aunt, so that role will definitely be passed to her someday. I don't even have to do much. I just bide my time. These puppets that were controlled by Zhong Cheng were just like Zhong Cheng himself. What about Ren Xiaosu? Han Yang wondered, do you want to leave him around? Zhong Cheng was somewhat hesitant. His original plan was to go to Stronghold 88 and find an opportunity to take Yang Ziajin outside. Then, he would use his superpower to control Yang Ziajin before letting her go back and live like a normal person. But Zhong Cheng did not eye Yang Ziajin's influence within the Yang Consortium from the start. He was only interested in her influence with the saboteurs. He was a supernatural being himself, so he understood what it meant when organizations like the Pyro Company and saboteurs started bringing together supernatural beings. That would truly tilt the balance of power in the world. Meanwhile, Zhong Cheng would not even need to spend too much effort on the saboteurs. He would only require Yang Ziajin to get the entire saboteurs involved. However, an unexpected involvement from Ren Xiaosu happened. When he first learned that Ren Xiaosu was Zhang Jinglan's student, he was absolutely ecstatic on the inside. If the successor to Stronghold 178 were to fall into his hands, the Zhong Consortium would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Zhong Cheng loved his superpower. It was a hand that could control everything from behind the scenes. He could easily gain the status and power of others and control them like a puppet. However, Wang Kongyang said that Ren Xiaosu did not really seem to have that good a relationship with Zhang Jinglan. This made Zhong Cheng a little hesitant. He knew that what Wang Kongyang said might not be the truth, but even Zhong Cheng doubted that Zhang Jinglan really looked upon Ren Xiaosu as his successor to Stronghold 178. Wasn't Ren Xiaosu a little too young? Furthermore, could Ren Xiaosu convince the masses? Zhang Jinglan had been at Stronghold 178 for over a decade before he was able to fully win over the masses. As a member of Stronghold 178, everyone was even more supportive of him. But Ren Xiaosu was different. To the current Stronghold 178, he should still be considered an outsider, right? So after careful consideration, Zhong Cheng still felt that Ren Xiaosu's value was clearly not as great as Yang Ziajin's. Yang Ziajin and the leader of the saboteurs were blood relatives, and Yang Ziajin was also publicly acknowledged as the successor of the saboteurs. Han Yang, you should go along as well. It's best if Ren Xiaosu is captured alive. If you can't, just kill him, Zhong Cheng said calmly. Even if he could only get his hands on Yang Ziajin, it would still be a success. The group led by Jin Lan only numbered around a dozen people, and they ultimately could not stand up to the torrent of northern bandits riding motorcycles. Zhang Yihan was walking along when he suddenly came to a stop beside Ren Xiaosu. He looked at Ren Xiaosu, who was still panting hard on Yan Liuyuan's back, and said, "Boss, I'm going too." After that, Zhang Yihan turned around and said, "Two ND squad brothers. Follow me." Their group laughed and headed to welcome the bandits. "We can't have Jinlan get all the fun, right?" Zhang Yihan asked, "Do y'all blame me? If I hadn't brought y'all here from the mountain hideout, you might not be dying today." Someone said, "There wasn't really a point in living back where we were." Zhang Yihan smiled and said, "Yeah, it was boring. I wonder where we'll go after we die." "Underground," one of the bandits asked as he inspected his gun. "I don't know. In any case, study hard in your next life and learn a handy skill. Look at that Su Jinyuan. Just because he knew how to build a house, he attracted that woman into pulling him into her house every day," Zhang Yihan lightheartedly mocked. "I'll have to learn how to build a house in my next life as well. I wonder if I'll get to meet boss again in my next life. We should be able to reincarnate in time to meet him. Does anyone have a poem for the situation we're in?" "Ha ha ha, who would fucking know something like that?" These people had never been educated in their entire lives. When they were living in town, only the richer families could send their children to school. For them, they were sent to the factories and coal mines by the organizations. It was precisely because they could not stand those dark days that they became bandits. Now that they saw the light and knew what hope was, they preferred to die with some dignity. Suddenly, a sniper rifle boomed from a hill in the distance. Then a motorcycle in the cluster of bikes exploded into a huge fireball. Following that, the motorcycles exploded into balls of fire one after another. Yang Ziajin was once again using her specialty to dominate the battlefield. But there were too many bandits, and they were still getting closer. Zhang Yihan turned around and looked at Ren Xiaosu's back. He shouted, "We're gonna fucking take them on. My name is Zhang Yihan. I'm a hero too." Zhang Yihan did not know why he shouted out his name, but he felt that this was probably the most glorious moment in his life. From this moment on, it wasn't Zhang Yihan who needed the world, but the world that needed Zhang Yihan. He was not going to retreat, not even a single step. Yan Liuyuan did not turn around. He did his best to carry Ren Xiaosu as he ran west. Every nanomachine was making an agonizing sound inside his body at the burden they were carrying. Yan Liuyuan was already pushing his limits. "Bro, does this world not want to see us lead a good life?" Yan Liuyuan panted as he spoke. "We've already left the stronghold. We were already planning to hide in the wilderness and not have anything to do with them, so why are they still doing this?" Yan Liuyuan ran while carrying Ren Xiaosu and asked blankly, "Bro, are these the sorrows of this era?" He was not sad for Jin Lan and the others since he had never interacted with them before. Nor did he think that these people were that heroic, because he had witnessed a more heroic act before. It was just that this era did not seem like it had any intention of letting anyone lead a good life. In this chaotic world, one could only dream if they sought to better their lives. Ren Xiaosu was still a young man and did not used to understand why Zhang Jinglan was so tired of war. He also did not understand why Qing Zhen and Li Shenton would bother fighting to the death with their enemies. But now he and Yan Liuyuan understood why the world was called chaotic. It was because no one would be spared from it. Without enough power, there would be no way to build a place of one's dreams. Before achieving absolute power, everything else was just wishful thinking. In the past month, everything that had happened in this valley was like an indulgence for Ren Xiaosu. In his 17 years of struggling and suffering, he had never seen his hands create something so beautiful before. So even though everything felt really surreal, he was still willing to give up his rationality and believe it was all true. It was a normal day today, just like any other day before. But when the bullets arrived on the battlefield, the peace from before vanished into thin air. Yan Liuyuan did not dare to use curse manipulation because Ren Xiaosu was on his back. Right now, Yan Liuyuan was unsure if he could help Ren Xiaosu avoid the backlash together with him. If the backlash hit Ren Xiaosu, it would be over for him. Ren Xiaosu's weak voice came from behind. "Put me down." Yan Liuyuan pursed his lips and did not say anything as he continued running. The sound of the sniper rifle ringing in his ears was like an artillery bombardment, but there were too many northern bandits here. They had broken through the suppressive fire and come to where Zhang Yihan was. Ren Xiaosu said while trembling, "Liuyuan, put me down." He struggled while on Yan Liuyuan's back, but the pain was still numbing his nerves. Although the pain was gradually fading away, he still remained helpless at this moment. Right at this moment, the northern bandits went around the defensive position Zhang Yihan and the others were guarding. They split into two groups, and one of them rushed towards the sniper, while the other chased after Yan Liuyuan and company. More than 400 members of the northern bandits remained behind. Their numbers were too great for Zhang Yihan and his people to stand up to. When Zhang Yihan saw the bandits going around them, he immediately got anxious. "Stop right there! Come and kill me instead!" But the bandits did not care about them. Yan Liuyuan saw that the bandits were about to reach them, and no one could stop them. 5 plum blossoms suddenly flew out of Zhang Wu's arm with 5 crimson petals on each of them. In the intense wind, Zhang Wu's petals flew towards the bandits like blades. But there were far too few petals. It was still not enough. After one of the blade petals flew towards a bandit and sliced the life out of him, it transformed into a red glow before fading away. However, there were still hundreds of bandits around. Zhang Wu gritted her teeth and 3 plum blossoms bloomed again from the markings of a plum blossom stalk on her arm. But that was still not enough. She was about to attempt to burn up her life force as someone else had once done. Wang Yuji pulled her back and said calmly, "Teacher, we're still here." Then Wang Yuji picked up his gun and prepared to charge. At this moment, a surge of bandits were charging in Yang Xiaojan's direction. Yang Xiaojan was a sniper, so how could she kill so many bandits in a short time? Then Yan Liuyuan stopped in his tracks. He turned around and said to Zhang Wu, "Ms. Zhang, carry my brother on your back and keep walking forward. Don't turn back." He placed Ren Xiaosu on Zhang Wu's back and walked alone towards the battlefield and towards disaster. Xiaoyu shouted at the top of her lungs, "Liuyuan, what are you doing?" Yan Liuyuan said calmly, "Uncle Fugui, take big sister Xiaoyu and go." Xiaoyu tried her best to break free from Wang Fugui's grip. Meanwhile, Wang Fugui felt terribly awful on the inside. He did not know what Yan Liuyuan was trying to do, but he knew he could not let go of her hand. If he let go of her, something could happen to Li Xiaoyu as well. Xiaoyu cried out, "Liuyuan, come back here. What are you doing?" Yan Liuyuan turned around and smiled at Xiaoyu. "I want my sorrows to become the sorrows of this era." After that, Yan Liuyuan gradually stepped away. This was an era on the decline, and a new era was definitely arriving. But how strong would you have to be to build an era filled with hope? Yan Liuyuan did not know, but he felt that Ren Xiaosu should be able to do it. Suddenly, dark clouds appeared in the sky, and the distant earth let out a keening cry. This was a time when gods seemed to be walking the earth again, the era of the rise of gods. Yan Liuyuan walked towards the oncoming bandits step by step. Suddenly, a grey aura wrapped around him like an evil dragon representing calamity. The beast whose heart was bound was roaring. It was roaring at this era. Yan Liuyuan, who was just a harmless boy next door in the past, had mastered the power of wishes and curses. No one knew what he could do, nor did anyone know the extremes of his curses. Now he was cursing the sky to collapse and the ground to split. And so, the ground really broke apart. As Yan Liuyuan overexerted his power, his willpower suddenly stabbed and gave him a splitting headache. Finally, 2 teary streams of blood flowed down his cheeks. "Hnng, this won't kill me," Yan Liuyuan said softly. He did not feel any sadness. All he wanted was to bury this old era together with the world. "Bro, it's time that I protected you now and that impending new era as well," Yan Liuyuan said softly. In the distance, a huge amount of energy abruptly burst out of the trembling crust. Cracks suddenly started spreading across the ground just like the one that had originated from the Jing Mountains and was capable of tearing the strongholds apart. Almost instantaneously, the ground in front of the bandits broke apart. It was almost exactly the same as back then. That was the force of nature that Yan Liuyuan had witnessed with his own eyes and was now being released by him. The fracture cut through the ground like a knife as the world rumbled loudly like it was about to collapse. The fracture reached all the way to the bandits and trapped them in an abyss they could not overcome. Deep below the abyss was an endless darkness. When the winds of the wilderness blew into it, it sounded like a behemoth lived in it. However, the fault did not stop as it continued shooting northwards. Yan Liuyuan could not see any threat in the north, but he felt a very disgusting existence there that needed to be erased from this world. When Zhong Cheng, who was in the north, saw this scene from afar, he was scared out of his mind. He had not thought there would be such a powerful supernatural being in this world. Run! Zhong Cheng's calm demeanor disappeared. He madly dashed to the side to avoid it, but the fault kept chasing after him. He could not shake it off. However, Zhong Cheng realized the fault was running out of momentum. He was too far away from the battlefield. Even with Yan Liuyuan's full power attack, he could not kill Zhong Cheng, who was several kilometers away. Gradually, the fracture came to a halt before the abyss slowly started closing up. Zhong Cheng's heart sank as he fled north with the nano-soldiers. He never expected the bandits charging Yang Ziajin and Ren Xiaosu would be buried alive by an abyss. After surveying the area through her scope, Yang Ziajin looked up at the young man who had summoned the calamity. Zhang Yihan and the others stared blankly at the sight before them. They had survived? Was this the power of the gods? Yan Liuyuan just stood quietly and waited for the backlash. Since the curse was a natural disaster, the backlash would also be a natural disaster. Suddenly, a loud rumble came from the west. It sounded like the galloping of thousands of horses. Yan Liuyuan understood that a flood was coming. Yan Liuyuan used whatever was left of his strength and shouted at Wang Fugui and the others, "Run for higher ground." Then he slowly sat onto the ground in his weakened state. His nanomachines were out of energy, and the curse he had overexerted his willpower to cast left him unable to avoid the backlash. He could only wait for fate's judgment. Every spring, the floods in the valley would arrive as expected. When that happened, the valley would form a new river, and most of the landscape here would be changed by the flood. But the difference was that the peak of this year's flood seemed to have arrived a few days early. A boundless amount of water gathered upstream, which then crashed down like an avalanche. It was cascading at a speed faster than the blink of an eye. Yan Liuyuan could already hear trees breaking upstream. He turned around and looked up into the distance at the floodwaters that were towering high. It was going to crash down on them. But then he saw Ren Xiaosu break free from Zhang Wu's back. Xiao had broken free from Wang Fugui's grip as well. While everyone else was running for higher ground, Ren Xiaosu and Xiao were running towards him with all their might. Yan Liuyuan was stunned. "Bro," as the crest of the flood arrived, Wang Fugui and the others who were uphill could not avoid the rushing waters in time and got dragged into the waves. The plum blossom branches on Zhang Wu's arm suddenly materialized an extension of themselves, and the long plum branches tied everyone together as they got swept down along the river. When Ren Xiaosu heard the rushing of the floodwaters coming up from behind, he knew it might be too late. As such, Yan Liuyuan heard Ren Xiaosu's angry bellow as he shouted, "City Crusher!" An instant later, Ren Xiaosu's speed increased again. He suddenly arrived in the front of Yan Liuyuan as the torrent of floodwaters touched his back. But yet another unexpected event occurred. A supernatural being suddenly appeared atop a hill in the north. It was none other than Zhong Cheng's subordinate, Han Yang. In an instant, Han Yang raised his arm and a bright red spear appeared in his hand. When he tossed the spear, Yan Liuyuan said anxiously, "Bro, dodge it." The spear looked like it was soaring through the bounds of mortality. Ren Xiaosu also knew there was danger behind them, but he did not care. He forcefully grabbed Yan Liuyuan and Xiao's arms before City Crusher could deactivate and flung them onto the shore. After Xiao landed on the ground, she passed out. In midair, Yan Liuyuan saw the sharp red spear pierce Ren Xiaosu's right side. The long stream of floodwaters split the north and south into two different worlds. Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan were looking at each other from afar across the lengthy river of time. Ren Xiaosu's abdomen was bleeding profusely, but he smiled at Yan Liuyuan as though nothing had happened and said, "Don't you die." Then Ren Xiaosu got swept away by the floods and disappeared within the murky waters. "Bro, wait for me!" Yan Liuyuan cried out in grief. He wanted to get up and give chase down the river, but he lost all strength when he stood up and fainted. Suddenly, the wolf pack in the south headed north. The Wolf King rushed to where Yan Liuyuan was without caring about the floodwaters. When it came to Yan Liuyuan's side, it picked Xiao and Yan Liuyuan up with its mouth and left. Right after, the floodwaters came in and engulfed the area where they had just been. End of Volume 3, The Sorrows of Our Era. Next volume, Ruler of the Northlands. As such, Han Yang had been left behind by others. He was just a sacrificial pawn now. Upon reaching the outlying area of Mt Guan, Han Yang carefully made his way into a small stream flowing out of the valley. This was an area he was familiar with. The bandits controlled by the Zone Consortium used to be stationed inside of Mt Guan. The outside world thought the bandits in the valley had gone out of control. However, as the main party in this matter, how could the Zone Consortium have completely lost control of this place? All of the bandits at Mt Guan still remained under the control of the Zone Consortium. When he arrived here, Han Yang heaved a sigh of relief. He knew he was almost safe. However, the most dangerous moment when walking a tightrope was the last 3 steps. Han Yang heaved a sigh of relief before resuming his alertness. The ghostly opponent behind him was definitely still tracking him. He couldn't afford to be careless. But all of a sudden, Han Yang felt like his heart and lungs had been torn apart. A great force of inertia hit from his right and sent him right into the stream. He could not resist this force. A bullet spinning at high speed passed through the gap between his ribs. The massive tearing force ripped his muscles apart like they were wadding while his heart was pulverized. Only now did the sound of the sniper rifle reach his ears. Han Yang fell into the stream with his blood flowing from his wound, dyeing the water red. He laid on his back and watched the sky appear to darken before his life faded away. In the distance, Yang Xiaojun got off the ground. In order to hunt down Han Yang, she had spent the past 2 days and 2 nights awake. Yang Xiaojun's eyes were bloodshot, but it wasn't clear if it was due to crying or a lack of sleep. She had a chance to finish off Han Yang earlier, but she held back so Han Yang would experience the same pain as Ren Xiaosu. No, she wanted Han Yang to experience even more intense pain. At this moment, Yang Xiaojun was feeling a little lost. The other day, she had sprinted in a frenzy to the river to search for Ren Xiaosu. Even if he had really died, she needed to see his body first. But the river was moving too fast. She could not keep up even after running with all her might for several kilometers. All she could do was helplessly watch as the river took Ren Xiaosu further away. Even supernatural beings had limited endurance when running at full speed. Seeing that she could not keep up with the floodwaters, she forded the river at a narrow point to chase Han Yang down all the way to Mt Guan. But what to do after killing Han Yang? Would she go after Zhong Cheng next? However, just killing Zhong Cheng would not quench her hatred for him. Suddenly, a white paper crane flew onto her shoulder. Yang Xiaojun was stunned for a moment before opening up the paper crane. She saw a line of beautifully written words on it, "Come to the Central Plains. After the matter here is handled, Auntie will help you to finish off the Zone Consortium." When Ren Xiaosu opened his eyes, he felt as though he had lost all his strength. And he heard someone say in surprise, "He's awake." The voice belonged to a girl. Ren Xiaosu looked over in silence and saw a girl who was around the same age as him looking at him from the passenger seat. He was lying in the back of an off-road vehicle with the back seat laid out flat like a bed. The girl picked up the vehicle's walkie-talkie and said, "Big bro, the injured boy has regained consciousness." The vehicle slowly came to a stop. Ren Xiaosu had not said a single word since he came around. He had not figured out what had happened yet, but he could feel a sharp pain in the right side of his abdomen throughout all this. The door opened and he saw a middle-aged man in a wheelchair being pushed over. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Hello, my name is Wang Shenzi. We had found you by the river unconscious and severely injured, so we made the decision to bring you with us. I hope you don't mind." Ren Xiaosu stayed silent for a moment before saying, "Are my injuries serious?" "I have to congratulate you on that," Wang Shenzi said with a smile. Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. What was there to congratulate? Sensing the doubt in Ren Xiaosu, Wang Shenzi kept his smile and said, "The wound you suffered happened to be right at your appendix. Whatever penetrated you actually cut it off for you, so you don't have to worry about getting appendicitis anymore." Ren Xiaosu was speechless. The young girl smiled. "My name is Wang Shenjian. How did you get injured?" Ren Xiaosu replied without any hesitation, "We were farming, but when the floods arrived, our settlement was wiped out. I was carried away by the floodwaters and hit into a tree where a branch went right through my abdomen." "I see." Wang Shenzi nodded with a smile. He did not seem like he had any intention of getting to the bottom of how this wound was inflicted. But Ren Xiaosu had some hesitations of where these people were from. Where were they going? In this era, anyone who had an off-road vehicle was no ordinary person. But even though Wang Shenzi sat in a wheelchair, Ren Xiaosu could vaguely sense that he was the person in charge of this convoy. Ren Xiaosu did not wish to tell the truth. He no longer trusted anyone. There was a time when he wanted to believe in something, but that brought about a disaster. Since he experienced that, he definitely had to remember the pain. Wang Shenzi asked, "It's not convenient for you to move about. Why don't you follow us and wait until your injuries are healed before making any plans?" Ren Xiaosu asked in return, "Where are y'all headed?" "Stronghold 178. Wang Shenzi smiled and said, "We're from the Central Plains and are heading to Stronghold 178. Do you know about Stronghold 178? "I do." Ren Xiaosu nodded. "But I've never been there before." Only at this time did Ren Xiaosu realize these people were actually from the Central Plains to the east. So these were Central Plainsmen? He had been swept along by the flood to the east. But in the end, he was brought back to the northwest by these people. It was in the exact opposite direction. But why were these people going to Stronghold 178? Ren Xiaosu noticed that everyone in the vehicle was dressed in casual attire, and there weren't any special symbols in the vehicle either. "Okay." Wang Shenzi nodded and said, "Since your home has been washed away by the floods, come with us to Stronghold 178. Who knows, you might be able to find a place there and settle down." When he heard the word home, Ren Xiaosu felt a sharp pain in his heart. Wang Shenzi saw Ren Xiaosu's expression and said, "Apologies for reminding you of your painful memories." Ren Xiaosu did not try to hide it. After all, he should be like a distressed refugee right now. He paused before saying, "Stronghold 178 doesn't accept outsiders." Wang Shenzi smiled and said, "I have some connections with Commander Zhang over there. Perhaps we can help put in a word for you. Even if that doesn't work, we can't just leave you out here in this wilderness." Ren Xiaosu thought for a while. "All right, thank you then." Ren Xiaosu's injuries were indeed very serious. A sense of helplessness permeated throughout his entire being and into his bones, and he did not even have the ability to think properly. He was too seriously injured this time, so he needed to find an opportunity to apply the black medicine on himself as soon as possible. When the convoy got back on the road, Ren Xiaosu asked to make conversation, very few people from the Central Plains come to the northwest. Why have y'all come to such a poor place? The girl answered as though she did not have any reservations, we're here to open up the trade routes in the northwest. Ren Xiaosu pondered this for a moment. Open up the trade routes? Would the Zone Consortium, spread across the trade routes, agree to that? As they traveled, Ren Xiaosu checked on his wound. The tear in his right side was horrific. Fortunately, these people had stitched it up for him. Otherwise, he would probably have died before he could even come around and apply the black medicine on himself. The sutures over the wound were straight and neat. He could tell the person who did it was meticulous. Listening to what these people were saying, Ren Xiaosu realized he had been swept by the floodwaters to more than 100 kilometers away. He did not even know how he survived. When it was time to eat, Wang Shenzi's subordinates brought over some piping hot food for Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu ate silently in the vehicle. But as everyone in the convoy knew that he had just survived a disaster, they thought it was normal for him to be quiet. After sunset, the convoy set up camp on schedule. Ren Xiaosu heard them discussing the entire northwestern and southwestern situation by the campfire. A man said, "Why did a war suddenly break out there? Hasn't it been several decades since any conflicts happened in the region? We never used to pay attention to that area." However, Wang Shenzi said with a smile, in the past, it was because that place was quite inaccessible by traffic. Meanwhile, the clans in the Central Plains took no interest in the southwest either. They could not even handle the matters back home, so how could they have time to care about whatever was happening over there? We don't really have any dealings in that region anyway. The southwest was destined to be an isolated region due to its geographical location. However, it seemed that because of the sudden war that happened recently, some people in the Central Plains started paying attention to it. It's said that Qing Zhen is an extremely formidable figure. Wang Shenjian thought for a moment before saying, although we don't know the details of the war, after the Qing Consortium and the Yang Consortium were done dealing with the Li Consortium, it seems that the Yang Consortium also got played by Qing Zhen. We must definitely be careful of a belligerent like him. To the eyes of an outsider, the developments in this war looked like Qing Zhen had been controlling it entirely on his own. From the beginning to the end, the war fully emanated Qing Zhen's ambitions and plans. However, only those who were in the know understood that Qing Zhen had only been doing whatever it took to protect himself all this while. Just as Qing Zhen had said, if he had been given more free rein previously, he might not have become the head of the Qing Consortium now. In the current times, those who were satisfied with the status quo would eventually get destroyed and die. On a long and dark road, no one could turn around until they saw the light. Someone suddenly turned around and asked Ren Xiaosu, "Aren't you from the northwest? Do you know how the war started?" Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "I'm not sure. I'm only a refugee. Why would I know about those things?" The person speaking scratched his head. "True, these matters are really far from you, ha ha ha. I guessed I asked for nothing then." When Wang Shenjian heard that, she asked Ren Xiaosu, who was half propped up in the vehicle, "By the way, I haven't asked you your name yet." Ren Xiaosu hesitated for a moment. "My name is Ren Xiaosu. My family was also swept away by the floodwaters. If you encounter anyone looking for me in the Central Plains, please tell them that I'm still alive." This was the most Ren Xiaosu had spoken in days. Ren Xiaosu had wanted to hide his identity, but it was not like these people knew much about the northwest and southwest anyway. So Ren Xiaosu dismissed the thought and gave his real name. Moreover, he was hoping to find his lost family. His name should be considered quite unique since it didn't contain any repetition. If Liu Yuan, Wang Fugui and the others heard his name mentioned, they would definitely come looking for him. In fact, he would also have liked to go look for Yan Liu Yuan and the others. But finding people in this vast world was simply too difficult. He still had more important things he needed to handle. During this period, Ren Xiaosu would have to pay back the suffering and despair the Zone Consortium had inflicted on him. However, his strength alone was limited, so Ren Xiaosu was thinking about how he could get support for his cause. Now that this group of people in front of him were thinking of opening up the northwestern trade routes, perhaps this would be his chance. Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt that he could understand Li Shenton much better. Back then, he thought Li Shenton was like a demon. But now, Ren Xiaosu finally understood that when you were not living in a state of pain and hatred yourself, you shouldn't be trying to persuade others to be kinder. Of course, understanding was one thing, but being friends was another. Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked, "Are there any wars in the Central Plains?" Wang Shenzi glanced at him and said, "That's a place that any military would be willing to fight for." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Wang Shenzi meant that there were also wars happening in the Central Plains. He asked, "Don't they all say that the Central Plains are a prosperous and wealthy place?" Wang Shenzi smiled. "It's precisely because it's prosperous and rich that wars happen. There's no contradiction between the two." Ren Xiaosu did not probe further. That wouldn't match his current status as a normal refugee. But Wang Shenjian's interest did get piqued, and she got in the mood to chat. "What do you refugees in the northwest usually do?" Ren Xiaosu calmly answered, "Farming, brick making, and digging ditches to irrigate the crops." "How long does it take to fire a kill of bricks?" Wang Shenjian asked. Ren Xiaosu answered, "The black bricks take about 13 days to make, but that also depends on how long we take to cool the kill down with water. We haven't fired any red bricks before, so I don't know how long those take to make." Wang Shenjian nodded and did not ask anything else. The questions might have seemed casual, but there was actually intent behind them. But at this moment, several military transport trucks suddenly drove over from the northwestern direction. Everyone stopped talking and looked over. When Ren Xiaosu saw the mark of a long saber on the vehicles, his heart sank. That was the symbol of the Zone Consortium. They were still at least 100 kilometers away from the Zone Consortium, so why would their people suddenly appear here? Ren Xiaosu shifted himself further into the vehicle and kept his face hidden in the shadows within. Meanwhile, Wang Shenzi and the others remained seated by the campfire like they were not worried at all. Those vehicles stopped next to the campsite, and 3 combat platoons from the Zone Consortium disembarked. The leader was a tall and broad-shouldered man. He looked like an officer of the Zone Consortium. He frowned and asked, "Who are you people?" Wang Shenzi turned his wheelchair around to the officer and said with a smile, "We're from the Central Plains and are headed to Stronghold 178. Who are you?" The officer did not answer Wang Shenzi's question. Instead, he continued asking, "What are you going to Stronghold 178 for?" "We're going there to do business," Wang Shenzi replied briefly. "This route is controlled by our Zone Consortium. Why don't you all come back with me to the Zone Consortium first and we'll let everyone leave after we get a clear understanding of the situation," the officer said. It sounded like this officer was still being polite as he was unsure of who he was speaking to. However, Wang Shenjian said, "Then wouldn't we have to take a detour? We'll just stick to our planned route and mind our business without troubling the Zone Consortium." At that, the Zone Consortium officer dropped his polite tone and said to the soldiers beside him, "Take them back." Then they heard the Zone Consortium officer say to Wang Shenzi, "I'm sorry, everyone. You're not allowed to enter this area." Ren Xiaosu suddenly wondered if the Zone Consortium was trying to isolate Stronghold 178 in the northwest and prevent any contact between them and the Central Plains.